consider not collecting our inside millage and providing a property tax, some property tax relief, and increasing the sales and use tax by 0.5 cents for a 1-year period of time. So we've had 2 hearings on that, and we wanted to provide an opportunity for people who may not have been, well, that's a double negative, available this morning to be able to provide public comment. So this, in effect, is like a 3rd public hearing for that purpose. So before I open it up to public comment, I would just ask my colleagues if there's anything that they wanted to add at this juncture, or if we just want to.
Let's hear from the audience.
All right. All right, so with that in mind, anyone who would wish to address the board, please come forward, provide your name and address for the record. And
Madam President, maybe I should say something first.
Okay.
Could I maybe explain what we're thinking, just so we're all on the same page before we take public comment? Perhaps we should just actually say what we're doing and what we're considering doing, because out of this board, we say these 2 words, but we don't say them together, except maybe once in the last 20 years, which is raise and taxes. We've said both of those words, but we don't say them together. Except once, and there was a good reason why we did that, which we can explain. But what we're talking about doing, anytime people see politicians say, oh, we're going to raise a tax, then it's, oh, they're just going to go and spend money, I'm already overtaxed, what are we doing? Because we're considering raising the sales tax. But we're not doing that in isolation. What we're talking about doing is raising a sales tax, and we'll get into the numbers, at the same time eliminating our portion of property taxes. So let's talk about what that actually means. And I think when you put it in that context, it's a little different when most of the folks have come to our other couple of meetings. Property taxes, we know and we agree, have been ridiculous and have gone up way too much, especially in light of what happened recently with the triannual revaluation of property values, and auditors come in, they set the values, and state law mandated we had to charge property tax based on that home valuation. Whether you were going to sell your home or never sell your home, everybody was essentially treated the same. And that really, really adversely affects certain people. So we started looking at it from the standpoint of what's actually involved with a property tax. First thing I'll say is about 70 to 80% of your property tax bill is your public schools. There is a school board, the voters of your community votes those levies in. We literally have nothing to do with it. So about close to 80% of your local tax bill is all about your schools. We, meaning the county, and what we do with property tax money and sales tax money is we run the county services. Well, what's that mean? The sheriff, the prosecutor, the jail, children's services, things like that, building and zoning. Those are the things under our purview. So that's what we use taxpayer money to go and run. So now we're in a situation where 75, 80% of the tax bill goes to schools. We have nothing to do with it. Literally about 5% of your property tax bill comes to the Board of County Commissioners. That's all we have any control over. So out of that 5%, what does that actually mean? We had the auditor come in and did some numbers for us. So out of the average tax, or the average value of a home inside of Warren County is around $300,000. The average of what we collect on that average home is $470. So your total Warren County property tax bill for a $300,000 house is $470. Let's have that number in mind. What we're contemplating is a sales tax increase to give a tax reduction to our homeowners. So if we raise sales tax by 0.5% for every $10,000 you spend, and it's not spend on everything. Your mortgage and your rent is exempt from sales tax, your groceries are exempt from sales tax. This is just what you spend in Warren County. Let's say that's $10,000 that you spend, real cash, out of pocket, inside of Warren County. That equates to $50. So we're talking about, for somebody that spends $10,000, raising your taxes $50. And if you live in an average house inside of Warren County that's $300,000, we're talking about eliminating $470 worth of taxes. So net, we're not talking about a sale or a tax increase. What we're proposing for property owners inside of this county is a dramatic tax reduction, net of around $420. So that's the only reason we're talking about raising one tax, a sales tax, is in conjunction with eliminating our portion of the property tax, which again, those numbers aren't made up, those aren't opinions, those are real numbers. 470 reduction in tax while increasing for $10,000 spend $50. So we think that's something worth considering, especially in the context that we're very blessed inside of the county, that we know 50 to 60% of our sales tax is paid by people that don't live here, because tourism is our #1 industry. So we're trying to leverage what other folks come into the county and spend to the benefit of our residents. That's literally everything in a nutshell of what we're trying to do. So I wanted to paint that picture of the context of why are they talking about this? Do they just want more money? Are they tax and spend people? Our board has a 20-year history of literally being, I think, the most fiscally conservative county in the state. We've literally turned down federal dollars to spend on stupid stuff because the federal government's broke with $39 trillion in debt. So we have had a real history of being incredibly fiscally conservative with your money. So hopefully that kind of sets the table of why are they even considering that.
Let me also give while
Sure.
we're talking, just to give a
Absolutely.
brief explanation of how taxes work with various different jurisdictions in our county. So the primary way in which the county earns money through taxation is through the property tax and through sales tax. Those are the two primary sources of our income. Typically, the primary source of income for a municipality or a city is through a earnings tax. They also can have some property taxes, and then there are what we call unincorporated parts of the county, which are townships. And townships earn money through property taxation. They don't get sales tax, and they don't have a earnings tax. Now, a township can have an earnings tax if they enter into something called a JED, which is a Joint Economic Development District. And that's a district that they create. They have to partner with the city, and then they can, in that particular district, levy an earnings tax. So some townships can have a JED, and if they partner with the city, but primarily the townships make money through the property tax, and they can have various different property taxes. So they can have a property tax for fire and EMS services. When Ohio actually enacted for the first time a sales tax, one of the propositions that was made to cities and to townships by the state in order to get that sales tax passed was that the state would share in certain of the sales tax revenue with cities and townships. Then a number of years ago, I believe it was under Governor Kasich, they removed that in like 2011 or 2012, and they took all that money away. Kasich did that to balance the budget in Ohio, which they had to do every year, and then all these townships and cities were scrambling to make up the difference with that. And some of them put on an additional property tax increase. Cities, some of them increased slightly their earnings tax. But understand how we primarily make money and how we tax in order to make money. So the property tax, and also there's different taxes have different effect on individuals. So generally, when economists talk about taxation, sometimes there are taxes that they call progressive taxes. And a progressive tax typically is a tax that as you have more money or have something of more value, you pay a higher share to the government. So the federal income tax is highly progressive because as you move up in your income bracket, you pay a higher percentage of your money to the government. That's a progressive tax. The property tax is progressive too, because while everybody drives in, a city or a township or a county, you get fire services and EMS services and police services and various other services, but you pay more for them if you have property that has more value. So you're paying a progressive tax. The sales tax is pretty much more equal, and that's why they call it regressive, because it depends upon how much money you actually spend that is subject to the sales tax. And that's a much more equivalent matter. Now, obviously, if you buy a car, and here we've got a big car area in down north of Fields Erdel Road, and if you buy a car, you pay a sales tax on the car, and that's pretty significant. However, that's how the tax works. Now, real estate taxes are kind of complicated, and it's hard for people to understand what's going on with them. But here's generally how it works. So the auditor of our county, his job, it's not like the state auditor. The state auditor does something different. The state auditor deals with honest services fraud and things like that. But in the county auditor is actually evaluating the market value of all the real estate in the county. And why is that important? Now that's important because that determines the property tax you pay. And this is all established by state law. And the property tax works this way. The auditor evaluates what they call the real or the market value of your property. But that's not what's taxed. It's only the taxable part based upon the real or of the actual value, the market value of property is 35% of that. Then you multiply the 35% by a millage rate. And so all these taxing jurisdictions, like schools are the primary one, which Commissioner Young mentioned, schools are 75% of the property taxes. Schools frequently have 70 or more mills that they charge you. So you take the millage rate, you multiply it by the 35% of your property valuation, and you divide by 1,000. That's your tax. And that's how it's calculated. And it's kind of complicated, but that's how it's done. So when we're talking about today whether or not we give a property tax reduction, we're talking about something called inside millage, which is established by state law, and we have the ability to not charge that. This commission has the ability to not charge that amount of money, which is something like 2.7 mils. It's around there. So that's what's going on. The question today is whether or not we reduce and do not charge, which is we have the ability in our discretion under state law to not charge that inside millage, which you then take that 2.7 mils, you multiply it by your 35% on your actual market value, and divide by 1,000. That's how you establish your tax amount.
Commissioner Jones, you're actually an expert on this since you were a state senator relative to some of the property tax stuff. Our auditor, we'll give a lot of credit to our county auditor. He was literally head of the state association, and they changed the law based on his recommendations and his committee's recommendation. So could residents see the same type of a tax increase just because their home value went up in the future like they did now?
No, the state legislature, based on the work of the committee for which Auditor Nolan was a part of, they changed the state law to cap the rate of growth at the rate of inflation. So what we were seeing around Ohio, but certainly in Warren County, are these huge increases in valuations that had the effect of then increasing what one was paying on property taxes. So even though you weren't realizing a gain, you were still paying that increase in tax. And so now, the state law, will kind of flatten that out and keep those big spikes from happening in the future. They also just recently, agreed to double the homestead exemption, which will be effective in this upcoming tax bill. You'll see that reduction in your tax bill. It's a 1-year doubling of the exemption. It's also why there is a delay in you receiving your property tax bill, because all of the treasurers are having to recode everything and recalculate, but those will be coming with the new figure. And so to the extent that folks like that, they can certainly weigh in with the legislature about that moving forward. So those are two things that they've done to, in recognition of those huge spikes that people were seeing in some areas with respect to property taxes. So, did I answer your question?
You did.
Okay.
It's probably good, since we're 20 minutes into it, we're probably got the group that we're talking to. There's a couple of other, everybody has opinions. I always like to deal in facts before giving an opinion. That when we say we're very fiscally conservative and we're not just trying to raise your taxes, anybody got a guess in this age of inflation, when everything has been going up over the last couple of years, especially several years ago, but the last couple of years, we have a lot of employees, we see wage pressure, we pay more for everything just like you all do. Anybody got a guess how much our budget went up last year for this year? Not 5 years ago or anything like that. Anybody got a guess how much our budget went up this year? Boom. We cut our budget by 1/4%. So we're not, I'm just trying to set the table, we're not some tax and spend government. That's number one. And number two, in the context of property taxes, I think it's also very appropriate to set the table on a comparison of us versus them, which you always hate to do, but in government, that's exactly what we do. Our auditor did a spreadsheet showing the total, as Commissioner Grossman talked about, inside millage. So all of the taxes that are assessed to property owners inside of particular counties. And he did it for 15 counties. Let's go over a few of these highlights. And again, this isn't an opinion, these are the numbers. Start at the top of the list with their total, and it's, again, it gets complicated, but the important number is the number. In Lucas County, their number is 28.94. Is that good or bad, or what is that? Cuyahoga County, our friends where Cleveland is located, 26.53. Our friends to the south in Hamilton County, 25.76. Our friends to the north immediately, Montgomery County, 24.14. Franklin County, where Columbus is located, 20.37. But let's bring it down here to more suburban Cincinnati counties. How do we rank up with those? Our friends to the west in Butler County, who do a great job, their total millage number is 12.13. So it's about half of what these urbanized counties are doing, which is great. Our friends to the east in Claremont County, their number, 10.7. Almost a third of what some counties' total millage is what they charge their property tax owners. Warren County, 8.78. So we're 20% below somebody that's a third of what the urbanized counties are. So we are a fraction of what the urbanized counties are, and we're 20 to 30% lower than our friends that are also fiscally conservative in Butler and Claremont County. So again, I'm just trying to set the stage of why are we talking about what we're talking about, and are they really good with our money? Are they really fiscally conservative? And the other thing I'll say that perhaps our board is most proud of, anybody got to guess how much debt we have inside of this county? Zero. We have zero general fund debt. We pay cash for things. We save you the cost of carry on interest.
Let me also make a comment about the sales tax. We also, each county has different sales tax. We have the ability to add or subtract from sales tax, hence this discussion today. And I didn't bring these figures, but Martin, do you have the figures of if you take a look at the sales tax burden in various counties, we're low, considerably lower than other counties. And I think if we're able to get those at a break or something, we can provide you with those figures. So we are already one of the very low tax counties in sales tax as well. So even if this board were to increase it, we'd still be lower than most jurisdictions and most of the jurisdictions that surround us. So, and the other thing is, I think that you all should know where we spend money, just generally speaking. So we're responsible, this commission is responsible to do the budgeting, and we provide the financing for the sheriff, which is probably the most expensive entity in the county. We spend, I don't know, I think north of $16 million a year on the sheriff's budget. We have a very low crime rate, but we spend most of our money on the sheriff. We spend money in the prosecutor's office. We pay for the prosecutors. We pay for the auditor. We pay for the treasurer. We pay for the recorder. We pay for our county courts. We pay for our common pleas courts. One of the major things we spend money on that we're responsible as a commission to do is we build the facilities in the county. We built this building. We paid for this building. The new county court building, we paid for that building. The new sheriff's jail and facility, we paid for that building. The common pleas building we built. We renovated and did a big update to the probate and the juvenile court, which is on this campus. We're right now building a criminal suppression building to help our law enforcement with regard to training. And that building is being built right now. So we build a county garage. We build facilities. And right now, all these buildings have been built. And we don't have any debt on any of them. We don't have any debt on all those buildings have been paid for completely. No debt, no mortgage, no payments on interest. We've saved the county by basically going as pay-as-you-go, millions and millions of dollars in debt financing by having, so right now we have a significant reserve, which we're going to be talking about today. I think the reserve amount, we've got some various different accounts, is around $93, $94 million. So, and that's current money on account for us. And of course, why do we have reserves like that? That's because we collect money so that when we have to build a building or correct or maintain a building, we pay for it with cash without financing, saving debt costs, which are very high. So that's that's why this county has zero debt. It's one of the reasons why this county is one of the top rated counties by U.S. News and World Report in the nation. And it's why your taxes, actually, when you compare your sales tax, your property tax, and the other taxes you pay in the county, are lower than most every other county in not only Ohio, but in the United States. So that kind of establishes that we have a very high bar here in terms of our performance that we measure ourselves, and we pass on that to you all by being very conservative with our spending, with our debt, and what we do. And that's, if you compare us to almost any other county, we're doing an excellent job financially for this county and for its taxpayers.
We also don't get the full sales tax, so the state gets.
Most of it gets to the state.
Goes to the state gets the lion's share of the sales tax. It's 5.75%, goes to the state. So our ability to even have that as a revenue source is limited in nature by the legislature. So.
And we also get a portion of the gasoline tax goes to our roads and things like that. So there are some other sources of revenue that benefit the county. But the primary things that we function under are the property tax and a small portion, it's really a relatively small portion of the sales tax. And then there's also, because we have a lot of tourism, And we have what they call a bed tax. There's a lodging tax in Ohio too, that is, if you come in and you go to a hotel or motel, you pay a certain amount of tax, and that helps fund our Visitors Bureau, that helps to promote tourism, which is like our number one business really in Warren County is tourism to this county. It provides hundreds of millions of dollars in spending every year coming in. This is one of the reasons why we favored helping the tennis tournament, which we did to keep it here. Without our help, that tennis tournament would have gone to Charlotte, North Carolina. But it brings in a tremendous amount. We have a Warren County sports complex that we help fund that. And that brings in lots of lodging and traffic from all over the country with people who have to spend their nights here. They spend money on our businesses, they spend our money on our restaurants, and that also increases tax revenue through the sales tax. So there's lots of ways in which we've helped economic development in this county, and tourism is the number one thing that helps this county and funds a lot of what happens in this county.
I feel like I've already used my word allotment. I don't talk this much, but I'll say one more story that Commissioner Grossman brought up a good point of we all talked about paying cash, and at the beginning of my talk, I talked about we only said this one other time. I've actually been fortunate enough to do this for 22 years now somehow. We've only done this one other time during my term of raise taxes. And actually, I'm proud we did it. Why would he be proud, as conservative as he says he is, that we raise taxes? When I first came in, the jail situation was an emergency. We were releasing inmates. It was a real problem. We had a sheriff that didn't want to double bunk, and eventually we had a new sheriff come in. We started double, if not triple bunking in our jail. We did alternative sentencing. We did ankle monitoring. We did literally everything possible for about a 10-year period in lieu of building a jail. And then we're looking, and staff presented all these options of we've got to go build this jail, and working with the sheriff. It was time. We had to do it. We started early releasing some people that shouldn't have been early released from our jail. And that's when it really caught our attention. We have to do something. So we're going to build a $60 million jail. The normal way governments do that is by going and issuing debt, right? That's bonds. They issue a bond levy. And that would have cost us, what was it, Martin, about $35, $40 million
In interest payments?
in interest payments. So if we would have done it like everybody else does it, interest on that $60 million jail would have been 35 or 40 million. Or we could raise the sales tax 0.5% with a sunset period of 5 years. It's not an open-ended new revenue source, let's go create new ways of spending it. That 0.5% brought in, or no, it was quarter. It's a quarter of 1% increase in the sales tax for 5 years. It brought in $10 million a year for 5 years with what we had already put into saved in a rainy day fund. That literally paid for our $60 million jail out of that, saving literally close to $40 million in interest. So that's when I think that was a great deal for our residents because, again, close to 60% of that sales tax is paid for by folks that don't live here. And then when you look at our jail population, it's at least half of the folks in our jail don't live here.
Also, there is one other tax, I mentioned this, because when we developed the Warren County Sports Park, which brings in millions and millions of dollars with thousands and thousands of visitors who have to stay in Warren County hotels and motels, who then spend money in Warren County at restaurants and other venues, bringing in large amounts of sales tax revenue, which is one of our primary sources of revenue. We had a cap at the time of the bed tax that hotels and motels charge of 3%. So we asked our state legislature to raise it to 4%, so that we're just 1% up. Now this is primarily, but this is, you guys aren't all going to, the people in the county aren't going to motels and hotels, but other people outside the county are, because remember, our largest business really is tourism. So lots of people are coming in, but we didn't just go and raise this. we first went to all the hotels and motels in the county, all of them, and we asked them, do you want us to do this? And every single one said yes. One abstained, only one. And then we asked the legislature, and Ron Mag, who was our state representative, one of them, you were in the Senate at the time, yes. But he sponsored the legislation, and it was raised to 4%. And with that, we built the Warren County Sports Park. We didn't raise anybody's taxes. We funded it entirely out of that 1% that was paid for by individuals outside the county in the bed tax. That is how we built the sports complex, which then has had a tremendous, I don't know, Martin, if you know what their economic impact is approximately each year, but it's a tremendous impact and helps this county with our tourism industry.
I know the total impact of all tourism inside of Warren County is around about $1.5 billion. The sports complex, through the original studies, was anticipated to have just under 700,000 people on an annualized basis, and they're over about 1.3, 1.4 currently. So they've doubled the amount of folks that come to that facility.
So that gives you a basic tutorial on taxation in the county and what we've done to be conservative and to try to benefit our county.
So you've heard from us a little bit, so now we're here to listen to you all. So if you'd like to address the board, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. But don't everybody jump at once. Hi there.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, commissioners, for hosting this meeting this evening. I appreciate you guys considering the people who might be working. And I just want to quickly mention
First,
that,
can you please state your name and address for the record?
I apologize, jumped the gun a bit there. My name is Ian Logan. I live at 4630 Woodland Drive, Mason, Ohio, 45040.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to start by saying that no matter how well off the government might be, what matters ultimately is the pressures that the residents are feeling at the moment. And even if we compare it to other areas about their tax rates, at the end of the day, it's what the residents here in Warren County are going to be facing the next day once these sales tax increases are in place. So I do not believe that raising the sales tax is good for Warren County residents right now. And I understand the argument that non-residents will pay a part of it. Like, that's true. But Warren County residents are going to pay it at the end of the day. And every family buying school supplies, clothes, household goods, car parts, and basic necessities are going to feel this. And unlike property taxes, everybody pays the sales tax. Renters pay it, seniors pay it, young families pay it, working people pay it. People who are struggling just in this economy today, they're going to have to pay it too. And I'm not here to argue against property tax relief. Let me be clear about that. Like, there are people in Warren County, especially retired residents on fixed incomes, who are being crushed by property taxes right now. They do need relief. But raising the sales tax is not real relief. It's shifting the burden from one tax to another. And so not everyone in Warren County even owns property, but everybody in Warren County pays a sales tax. So if the county responds to high property taxes by raising the cost of living for every resident, then we have not actually solved the affordability problem, we've just moved it around. The sales tax increase is being presented as a way to provide property tax relief. So the question can't just be, how do we offset property taxes? We have to ask, why are residents being forced to carry so much of the burden through property taxes at all? So if you'll allow me to take a step back and look at this from a different perspective, this is not just a question about county budgeting. It's a question about leadership. Because as commissioners, you all are not just administrators. You all are leaders in our community. And local leaders have a responsibility to tell the truth about why residents are being squeezed in the first place. And that takes me down to the State House. Because our state legislature has underfunded public schools and pushed more of the burden down onto local communities. And school districts feel financially pressured to go to the ballot and ask residents for levies. You were talking about this earlier, Commissioner Yale. And residents, they do want to support their public schools, so they vote yes on these levies. And those same residents take on the higher property tax burden. And in that situation, both our schools and our residents are victims. And they are victims of caring about their children's education while the state fails to do its part. So my question is, why are the county commissioners not being more outspoken about that? Because I understand that fixing state policy is not within your statutory authority, but speaking out is absolutely a part of your responsibility as a local leader. And it's not just school funding that's raising pressure on property taxes. Ohio's tax structure has also shifted the burden more onto ordinary families. In fact, the median household income in Warren County is about $110,000, I believe. According to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, a family at that income level pays about 10% of its income in state and local taxes. And the richest 1% in Ohio pay just about 6%. So let me just repeat that. That means a median Warren County family pays a larger share of its income in taxes than the richest Ohioans do. And that is a problem. The people with the most ability to pay are paying a smaller share, while local communities are left relying heavily on property taxes, sales taxes, and levies to keep basic services and schools funded. So no, I don't support raising property or sales taxes right now, and I do support property tax relief, but I don't support paying for it by raising the cost of living on every resident in Warren County. And I don't believe that county leaders should stay silent while the state legislature creates the affordability crisis and leaves counties to clean it up. So real leadership means we need to find more than just some temporary Band-Aid. It means we need to stand up for residents and tell the truth about where this pressure is coming from. And it means demanding that the state stop pushing the tax burden down to us. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Before you go, so, Mr. Logan, of course, you're a Democrat, and are you in favor of the general Democrat policies, both nationally, state, and locally, with regard to taxation? Because generally speaking, Republicans are for lower taxes, lower rates, lower property rates, lower sales tax rates, while the Democrats are completely opposite. They are in favor of much higher rates because they believe in government that has a large amount of transfer payments. And what I mean by that is they tax certain people in order to provide for services for people who are not paying for the taxes on. I'm sorry about spilling that water. So are you in disagreement with the general tax policy of Democrats?
Well, I want to start off just by establishing that.
Before I finish that, and so what taxes are you in favor of, and which ones would you lower or raise in order to support the function of government and the services they provide?
So there's a few points there, and I'd say the first is that this isn't a Team Red versus Team Blue thing, and especially when we're talking about local politics, like the DNC has nothing to do with like the Warren County Democratic Party. Like we do share some values, but at the end of the day, the Warren County Democratic Party is just like-minded folks here in the community, our neighbors, and each other. It's not a Team Red versus Team Blue thing, and so the values of, say, a Democrat in one part of the country is going to be very different than the values of a Democrat here. Now, the other thing is that at the very least, I believe in taxation that means that people pay their fair share. Like I said, currently, according to the Institute on Taxation, that it is currently that the lowest earning families are paying a higher burden, are taking a higher burden of taxes than.
What is it
the
on
local
an
side.
absolute basis? What percentage of the actual money that comes in? I have a feeling it's,
I can pull it up here on my
I have a
phone for a
feeling I
moment
know
if you'd
the answer
like,
to
but
that.
I just don't have it printed out right now.
Well, but here's the thing. We already know that as a county, our sales taxes are lower than most every other county.
But I don't live in another county. I live in Warren County.
I'll finish the question. How could it be, whatever the statistic is you're pulling, when we already have lower sales taxes, lower, and Commissioner Young already presented this, we have lower millage rates than all these other, many of these other counties, all the other adjoining counties, we're lower in terms of our millage rate. We're lower in terms of our sales tax rate. Our jurisdictions are, Mason, I don't know if you're from Mason or not, I think you are. Okay, so, and I'm very familiar with Mason because I was on Mason
You live there.
Council for years, and I drafted and passed 2 charter amendments in Mason. I created the tax policies of Mason. And the taxes in Mason for residents is 1%. You only are charged 1%. Now, I think Cincinnati's 2.2%. I think Dayton's maybe 2.4%. Lebanon is now 1.5% earnings tax. I mean, we're very low in Mason, for example, because of the legislation I passed. Now, when Kasich took away the amount of sharing for EMS and fire services, people all were having to scramble to raise taxes. In Mason, we didn't do that. We actually lowered the property tax from 5 mils to 4.4 mils. And I can go through an explanation for how we manage this. But the jurisdictions in Warren County, if you compare Warren County jurisdictions, both our county taxation, our city taxation, our township taxation, it's lower than all these other jurisdictions surrounding counties. So I'm not sure I understand your figures or how you got your idea that somehow we are marginally paying more tax in Warren County than surrounding counties.
It's about the share of taxes that you're paying compared to the income that you're making. So if it's the median Ohio family in a certain income bracket, and I base it off of the median Warren County household income, they're paying about 10% of their income in taxes, and the wealthiest are paying only 6% of their income in taxes. And so I think that discrepancy is important to point out, because my point here goes beyond just any one proposal. It's that as political leaders, you guys are able to address the larger pressures, and you guys can call out the entities that are in charge of the decisions that lead to these pressures.
Which is great, and number one, I appreciate you being here. We actually don't get too many real-life Democrats coming in and talking to us, so I appreciate you coming in. I think there's like 5 of you in the county now, so it's great.
Oh, we just used to be quiet, but now we're used to
I'm kidding, there's more
Well,
than
I just want to say real quick, if it's okay. Like, I believe, like, you and I, and me and Commissioner Groshman, and me and Commissioner Jones, we have more in common with each other than we do with any of the big wigs in Washington or maybe even in the State House.
You seem like a sharp, young man, and I appreciate you getting involved and coming. And again, I hold nothing against you with that. The only thing I would take issue with, because again, you're trying to extrapolate into income inequality and all that.
I wouldn't say it's extrapolation so much as...
Well, our real rates are lower than everybody else. And so if it's talking, don't raise a tax over here, but cut the tax over there, then it would be, what services do you want to defund? But the only other thing I would take exception to is our voices. Mm-hmm. Commissioner Jones has a lot of pull in Columbus and with the State Association of County Commissioners, and our auditor, Matt Nolan, literally led that work group. We, all 3 of us on this board, had multiple meetings with the auditor and gave recommendations that literally did go into law. So it wasn't we were silent on this issue. We spent the last year working on this and lobbying every legislator we knew to say we need real property tax relief. Because I actually agree with you that there are certain groups that need it more than others, because and I've said this forever, that I would like to think we've got it going on in Warren County, and most people think it's the best run county maybe in the state, if not the nation. And let's say our average house is appreciating at a quicker pace than other surroundings. So our $300,000 example is appreciating at 4% instead of nationally 1 or 2%. And I think those are realistic numbers. That means that $300,000 homeowner's net worth went up by $12,000, which is great. If you're a corporate person and you're flipping your house and you're moving on somewhere else, you just made a boatload on your money or on your home, which is a lot of people's biggest asset, by living inside of Warren County and having the government that we do and having the schools that we do. That's great. Who that doesn't help are the folks on fixed income that are elderly, and they're never going to sell their house. It doesn't matter to them that it went up another $12,000. They're struggling with that extra $50 or $80 a month. We get that, and we lobbied the legislature to do something about that. So that's the only thing I would take issuance with. We 100% stood up and said, we need to do something.
I would like to say there's a distinction between public and private lobbying and discourse, but also on Warren County, and especially with the schools, Mason is an example of a fantastic school district. I went to Mason City Schools. I got a very good education as a result, and it's not hard to figure out a big reason why they're able to be so good is because of funding. And the way that Mason's funded, the money that it has is not equivalent across the county. Not all of the public schools in the county have that source of funding. So I think when they keep...
Are you familiar with what each district cost per pupil is?
I'm not going to pull the numbers like out of thin air, but I would...
Here, I'll ask you one question. Who spends more per pupil? Mason, Kings, Cincinnati Public?
Now, based on the nature of the question, I'm going to guess Cincinnati Public.
Do you have any clue how much more? Okay, it's a given, but yeah, I kind of set you up on that one. So, Kings, and we've got the head trustee from Deerfield here, I think it's like $13,000 per student in Kings, something like that. Cincinnati Public spends about $20,000, if not $22,000, somewhere in there per. So it's not always how much you spend per pupil.
Yeah,
It's the quality of the education, and there's a lot of other variables that are involved.
But the funding matters to an extent, and the reason I bring up the
We
funding...
actually have no control.
I
I know,
over
I know.
funding.
The reason I'm bringing that up is because that is part of what is causing the pressure on property taxes. Like I mentioned earlier, the schools feel financially pressured to go to the ballot and ask for levies. Residents pass the levies, and because they want their schools to be funded, and that flywheel continues. And I'm simply saying, as local representatives, I'd like you guys to be more vocal about the funding deficit that many schools are facing, as you can see.
You
with the
clearly are
legislature.
unaware
Yeah.
of the amount of activity we actually participate in, both as individuals, as Commissioner Young said.
I know privately, but politically,
as-
politics
as
in the public theater as well.
No, you don't get to decide how we exercise our advocacy. We choose to do it in many cases through our state association, of which I'm a board member and am active on our advocacy committee. And I don't need to be screaming from the rafters because people don't care what I have to think in the legislature. I wish they listened to me and that, my opinion was the only one that mattered. It just doesn't work that way. And so, the suggestion that we somehow aren't advocating for our residents, I think is misguided, because we do that every single day. And it's like, look, people are entitled to have a different point of view than I have and that you have, and I respect, where you're coming from and appreciate that, you would prefer not a broad-based sales tax for people who consume. I mean, Ohio's sales tax system exempts a whole lot of things that are necessities, so you can choose whether or not to buy things. Or what you buy if you want to avoid the tax. Unlike property taxes, which I think can be confiscatory in nature, because as we've seen, as valuations increase without any selling of that property or gain on that property, the government was taking more of it. And so, that's wrong. Reasonable people can disagree about economic policy. I personally understand that things cost money. We try to do things for as little as we possibly can. We are required under state law to perform certain duties on behalf of taxpayers, and they expect us to do it. We work every day to do it as efficiently as possible. And we're considering, to your point, yes, shifting to see if we can take the burden off property taxpayers, because perhaps a consumption tax that's broad-based, that everyone pays if they consume, they can choose to consume or not, and the consumers in our county, more than half of them are coming from outside of the county. I mean, that's the basic proposition, but reasonable people can disagree with that. Do you own your home?
Nope, not currently.
I'm sorry.
Nope, not currently.
Okay. So you rent?
Like many folks my age, I am fortunate enough to have a supportive family. In fact, I am able to do other things and access other opportunities that are available to me because of the privilege afforded to me by my upbringing. And I think that is a rare opportunity for people, and I'd like to take it.
Well, that's great, Mr. Logan, and I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, we've got other people here. I
Yeah.
think thanks for coming, thanks for giving your opinion. Hopefully we've been respectful to you and that, yeah, we've got a little difference of opinion on how things work. But again, we're not in a national debate. We're talking about trying to net save our property tax owners money. That's all we're
Yeah.
trying to do.
And I'm just saying, I'm trying to think about, at the end of the day, like the next day when the property tax or the sales tax increase goes into effect, I'm gonna be seeing a bill that's higher than it was before, and some people are gonna be seeing a bill that's lower than it was before. But that's gonna be some people seeing the lower bill and everyone seeing the higher bill.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
And by the way, on a point that you can sit down if you want to, but you mentioned, of course, everybody actually does pay the property tax, even though you live with your parents, which is, I think, what you're telling us. And a lot of people your age still live with their parents, which is great.
It's actually a growing problem.
And, but it's not a problem. But the property tax, a business that pays a property tax it doesn't just that, oh, we're paying the tax. They pass on the burden of that tax through the charge they make for their services, their products. They're for-profit businesses, and they take a look at all of their expenses, and they take a look at their revenue, and of course, what are they trying to do? They're trying to make money for their shareholders, for their members, for the people that own their businesses, for the people that work for their businesses. If they're not making money, they're going out of business. And part of their expense for that business is the property tax. And even if you don't own the business or own the property that the business is in, you're paying for that tax through their charges they're making for their goods and services. And when we're considering what we're doing here, too, you have to realize that we're looking at the total burden. Now, I can understand Democrats, you see, favor progressive taxation. They want people who earn more money to not only pay more, because even if you just charge a flat rate, the people who earn more money pay more tax. Because if you charge 10% times $100,000, okay, that's $10,000. You charge 10% times $1 million, that's a lot more money.
I don't know
But
about the
that's,
Democrats, but at least for me, just at least the same share.
well, okay, but hang in there. But the Democrats charge a progressive rate on income. Because as you go up in income, you not only pay more money on a flat rate, you pay a higher percentage rate. All right? So now, why do the Democrats not like...
Look, I just,
well, hold on,
I
just-
have to say this.
Okay.
I would ask that you think of me as someone who was born in Cincinnati and grew up in Mason, Ohio, and is a Warren County resident. It's not Team Red versus Team Blue. Like,
You expressed
think
your
of me as a Warren
opinion.
County resident.
We
Okay.
appreciate you.
The only point that I'm making is this. The Democrats are for progressive taxation, not equal taxation. They're not taxing you based upon the services provided for you. They're taxing people with higher property values and higher income, a higher percentage of their money. That's Democrat policy.
You can say that, but you wouldn't know because they haven't been in charge in Ohio for my entire life, basically.
But that is whether Democrat policy nationally, statewide, and
The problems that we have today in the state haven't come from people that have been in charge of the state.
We'll welcome you back. I'd like to hear
Yes.
from any other residents on property taxes. Thank you.
Hi there.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Bowles. I'm at 446 Deerfield. Just a question for, thank you so much for holding this evening event. You had mentioned a couple times that it was only for homeowners that are going to receive this. You stated that a couple times. Is this only homeowners or is this everybody?
Is it businesses also? Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have the ability
Yeah, it's all-
to discriminate
it's all
between.
property.
It's
all
anyone that
property
pays the
taxes.
property tax.
Okay. So at first glance, this tax may appear neutral or even beneficial, but when you break it down by household type, the impact is not evenly distributed. Like, so for a typical household income, the sales tax increase, so if they're spending $30,000 in taxable spending, that's about $150. If they're spending 60, it's 300, and 80,000 would be 400.
And you know, they're
So-
probably living in a house that's a lot more than 300,000, right?
So, well, it actually less. So for many working families, renters, seniors on fixed incomes, and individuals with medical disabilities, the real and reoccurring increase in the cost of living, these households already have limited flexibility, and the renters in particular have received no direct benefit from the property tax reductions. So while the property tax relief, you've said it would help seniors, it's important to remember that not all seniors are homeowners. And even among the homeowners, the benefit is tied to the property value, not income or need. So the senior with a high value property might feel relief, but the others will see little or none at all. But everyone pays the higher sales tax and daily necessities. So the largest benefits, so you've said the business, will go to the commercial property owners, the higher value homeowners, apartment owners, businesses with significant real estate holdings. In many cases, those owners are not local, so some of the relief does leave the county entirely, while sales tax burden is paid by the residents. So included in the businesses, so we're not collecting any of the millage, so that includes the people with cell towers on their properties. They don't have to pay that property tax to the county.
My understanding is that the property tax relief goes to all business interests, to Commissioner Young's point, that they pay taxes.
Okay.
And I think Auditor Nolan made a comment, it goes to pipelines, to all businesses that are here.
Because we can't, it's not
Right.
constitutional for us to discriminate against the type of payer
Right.
only by the tax collected.
And I wanted to raise a concern too about how you were measuring the average home value. So like mine is a very, very small home, very small value. I pay very little in taxes, but I'm going to feel it in the sales tax. So if there are far more lower and middle value homes than there are high value homes, the average is skewed upward by a smaller number of $1 million properties. So the question is whether the analysis reflects the true distribution of homeowners, not just the average. I would also respectfully request that before any final decision is made, that the commissioners consider commissioning an independent study on the actual composition of sales tax revenues, specifically the percentage of purchases made by non-county residents,
We
commuters.
did, that's University of Cincinnati did that.
Right.
That's where we got the 60%
Right.
figure, was from the University of Cincinnati
Right.
study.
So how do they determine that the people coming are actually spending money? Because everybody that I talk to at the sports complex does not really spend that much money here in our town. So someone from the next county over, they just go right back home.
I mean, it's pretty sophisticated, the way you can geofence things, you check, you ping their cell phone of where are they from when people go into Kenwood Mall, they know where they're coming from, so it's just the way.
So they're pinging their phones and then they're pulling up their,
You'd have to
Internet
talk to them
transactions.
about their
Or their-
methodology,
There-
but they're
there's-
respected researchers for which, we utilize their expertise to be able to do the cost modeling around it. So I can't speak to the specific way they did it for that study, but presumably the University of Cincinnati Economic Center are experts in that.
So you're
I'll
voting
reach
for
out to them.
so you're voting for no property tax relief, is what you're saying?
I just think it would hurt some of our seniors and the people who have small value homes. Now, the people who have large value homes are gonna see a great benefit.
Okay.
Yeah, just so you know, and since we see you a lot in the
Yeah.
morning and you weren't here, you may wanna just look back at the YouTube video around it, cause we had a
I was
lot of,
watching, yeah.
we had some senior citizens talking about, cause many seniors in this community do own their homes. And we had one gentleman just
Right.
today who was very concerned about his property tax payment takes 2 months of his social security's on a fixed income. And so,
Yeah, I guess that's true.
you
but-
know,
right.
that is, we do hear from seniors
Right.
around that, which is
Right.
why we certainly have advocated to our state legislature for things like, capping the rate of increase
Right.
and for doubling the homestead exemption. So those are things. So there's not any one thing that's going to fix, this issue. It's a
Right.
lot of things like in totality. And so what we're simply trying to do is to spread out, to broaden the base and lower the costs on property, to the tax on property to the extent we can. We have very little, impact on it, but we typically think that to the extent that we can, provide some property tax relief, that's been our, that's been historically our priority. And so, I understand where you're coming from. I do think that, Ohio is different than a lot of other states that also collect sales tax, because a lot of those states don't exempt things like groceries, for example, and Ohio exempts things like groceries from sales tax altogether. So some other states do that. So it's your point is well taken.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight. Hi there.
Hi, I'm Joanna Duffy, and I live on East Pekin Road. I did want to thank you for having the later meeting time, and I also did want to say that all the people on Facebook that didn't show up should really, think about coming, because they did complain that you didn't have it, and then you did, and they're not here. So just want to say that. So if you vote to increase the tax, so it would be effective for 1 year, and then how would you decide if that was going to be permanent?
So every year, we're already required to, on an annual basis, to pass a resolution that says how much of the inside millage we're going to collect, up to the 2.7 mils. So we have to do that every single year. So next year, we would evaluate it. And what we're proposing is that we would only increase the sales tax for a 1 year period of time, and then it would sunset. And that we'd hope to have then the conversation for the next year when we need to report, pass a resolution saying how much we're going to collect. So, what we think based on our work with the budget and with consultation with the state auditor is we think that it's not a one-to-one collection. Historically, it's not been one-to-one. We've collected more in property taxes than the half-cent sales tax would replace. We think it's about $5 million shortfall that we would be, so an additional tax cut, if you will, that we would be absorbing through our regular budget process. So I want to make sure people understand this isn't like a bait and switch where we're going to raise the sales tax and that goes in, in perpetuity, and then next year we're going to decide to start collecting on the property tax. That is not how we would envision doing it. We would envision, so it'll sunset unless we take action to extend it, which means that we can cover doing it,
Okay,
for another
so-
year.
And when you would do that, then you would vote to say, make it permanent? Or like, would this be a yearly, every year you would look at it and say, because you're taking away the property tax, or, yeah, and you're
Yeah.
putting the sales tax, and so it's a yearly thing that's gonna be reassessed?
That would certainly be my preference, because we have to every year pass the resolution determining how much we're going to collect. And so my preference, this is just Shannon Jones's preference, would be that every year we'd have to pass this resolution so that there isn't this increasing of one tax and then this other tax slowly increasing back up.
The only thing I think we could do permanently would be increase the sales tax, which we don't want to do.
Yeah.
We can't bind a future board to the property, and that's by law.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
so it's a
I'm
really
trying to
good
understand.
question.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's why, and honestly, part of the calculus of doing this is if we really are in the best financial shape of any county in the state, we're a pretty good guinea pig try it here to see what happens.
Right.
And we are, and Commissioner Jones brought up a really good point, our financial people are telling us this is going to reduce our revenue by $4 to $5 million. So we are collectively lowering the total taxes being collected by the county.
Right, so you're not gonna get as much money from the sales tax as you would if you collected the property tax.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, cause that goes into my question of what would happen when you need more money, and so,
Yeah.
I'm looking at it from, future, I just feel like you haven't talked about that, so that's
Yeah.
why my question is like, oh, you do this for 1 year, what do you see then going forward? Because I'm from New York State and it's
Enough
just
said.
gonna skyrocket up.
Yeah.
And so that's what there is never that sort of talk about this is a yearly thing and.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what
hopefully
I'm
we've
trying
got
to
a little bit of street cred, like I said, with our jail.
Right.
We did a 5-year thing, and we did a 5-year thing, and then it
And
went
it's
away,
sunset.
so.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's, you've actually hit the nail on the head with it's why we're doing it 1 year at a time, because we have to report every year, we have to pass a resolution saying how much we're gonna collect,
Right.
and what we don't wanna do is make a tax increase permanent, without the offsetting, revenues. And so, look, to the good, meaning to the taxpayer, we will be collecting about $4 to $5 million less in your taxes to be able to fund our budget. So it's going to continue to have that downward pressure that we like to have when we do our budgeting every year.
Right.
If we after a year we think this doesn't make sense, then I think that's something that we've learned. We just want to be able to kind of try it as a way to reduce the property tax burden, while at a time where it's also going to lower the overall tax collections into the county, to see. So I guess I'd say to you that, or not you personally, but to the public, that we're doing this in a way that, yes, it reduces the tax burden for property owners, and it broadens the base for which 60% is paid for by people who don't live here. But it also has the effect of reducing the overall tax collections as well. And so we think it's worth kind of looking to see, is this a piece of the puzzle to
Right.
continuing to lower the taxes?
Yeah.
That's all.
cause it really is it probably is a state
It is a state
more
issue.
level than what you have control over, so,
Yeah.
okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for being here today.
And by the way, just as a sort of comparison point, the state sales tax that actually goes to the state is 5.75%. Our tax that comes to us, part of the sales tax, is 1.2%. So our total sales tax right now is 6.75%. Now Hamilton County, you have the state sales tax of 5.75%. That's everywhere. And they have 2.05%, so they've got 7.8% tax. I'll just ask you a question. How many of you guys decide not to go to restaurants in Hamilton County because you're paying, and by the way, if you eat in a restaurant, you're paying these tax, because you're paying 7.8% tax down in Hamilton County, you're paying 6.75% here. So even if we were to increase the tax, I'm not saying I'm for this, okay? But even if we increase the tax by what we're talking about, we're still lower than Hamilton County. We're lower than Montgomery County. We're lower than all these other counties all over the place. But I know you're shaking your head, but I'm just giving you that.
Butler County is 6.5%.
What is that?
Butler County.
I agree with you. I agree. That's the one that's
Yeah.
lower. I agree
Yeah,
with that.
well, I've got them all, I can read them all.
But
Yeah, go
their property tax collection rate's higher.
About 40% higher, yeah.
Well, you said that we're paying 6.75%.
We are.
We're paying 7% here in Warren County.
No, we're not.
No, it's
Well, when I figured out my receipts,
6.75%
it's
is,
7%.
6.75% is, well, 5.75%, I'm sorry, 5.75% is the state sales tax rate. Then you add 1.2% on top of that for our rate. That's what it creates our rate.
We're 6.7.
6.75.
6.75% is our total.
Right, but just 1 extra percent, right?
It's 1%, okay, so,
1%.
okay, so I'm sorry. that
Only
was
when we
wrong.
had the jail did it go up to
Yeah.
7%.
Okay. So
It
that-
was for 5 years, we did increase it to 7%.
Well, I don't think some of the places have taken it down then, because I figure out the taxes on my receipts and it still comes out to 7%.
If you find someone, you need to contact the county auditor,
Yeah.
because that's not right.
Yeah, our total rate in Warren County is 6.75%.
So it's still supposed to be 6.75?
It's 6.75 today.
Today, right now.
There's a county permissive tax on top of it. County
That's what we're talking
is.
That's what we're talking about.
Like, I don't know, AI is saying 7.25 for the county tax.
That's not the sales tax.
That's what we could increase it to.
That's the permissive. We don't go to the permissive. That's what we're talking about going to.
Our county sales tax, which is 5.75% for the state, is totally 6.75%. That's what we
And
charge.
what will it be when you raise it?
7.25.
7.25.
Which is equal to Clinton's, Hamilton 7.8, Claremont 6.75, Brown 7, Adams 7.25, Highland 7.25, Fayette 7.25, Greene 6.75, Montgomery 7.5, Preble 7.25, Drake 7.25, Miami 7, Champaign 7.25, and Clark 7.25. So there's a couple that'll be lower than us, but I mean, it's pretty much right in line with what everybody else surrounding us is.
So you're saying reported if somebody's charging a Warren County resident 7%?
That's not right.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we've seen that, like, when the jail sales tax came off, we saw it sometimes at the outlet mall because it wasn't trickling down to some of those stores. So if you have a receipt, I'm not saying it was there, but if you have a receipt, then work with the staff here, or to Commissioner Young's point, the Auditor Nolan's office, and their office will go out and make sure that that's corrected, because,
And if you see a vendor trying to charge you 7%, you tell them it's not right. It's 6.75 right now. That's a fact.
It amazes me the number of people that even don't know how to figure out the tax.
Yeah.
Well, you're
Because
talking about
years
the-
ago, I shopped at a Kroger place, bought some things that were groceries which are not taxed, and then I also bought some things that should be taxed. And when I figured out my amounts, it was completely wrong. So I went to the service desk and says, this isn't right. No, they got some managers. None of the managers knew how to fix it. They did not know how to figure out the tax. And then they told me to call 1-800 Kroger's. I called them, and the guy said, he says, I always shop, but he says, I never figured out to see if the taxes are right. He had no idea how to do it. So finally, the store just gave me all the tax money back and didn't charge me anything because nobody could figure it out.
I might have to try that one.
Right,
So
but the fact,
it was weird. The one guy on the 1-800 Kroger says, I think I better check this out after this.
but the fundamental fact is, right now, if they're properly charging it, the state tax is 5.75%. Our tax rate for sales tax right now is 6.75%.
And who would I report it to if they're still charging 7?
The county auditor would,
County auditor.
yeah.
And you're right, there's one jurisdiction that's lower than us, and that's Butler County, but they're higher in property tax considerably.
Well, it helps me because if I walk across the road, I'm in Butler County. And so my house is in Warren County, but if I walk across the road, I'm in Butler. So almost all the stores I shop at are in Butler County. So I'm hoping they don't raise theirs higher than 6.
Well, there you go, and you know what? Regardless of what we do today, I'm not saying how I'm voting on this, regardless of what we do today, you can still do that. We're not changing Butler County sales tax.
Yeah. Well, I know we're not changing theirs.
Just that I will tell you from my own perspective, when I go out to buy things, I buy things depending upon the store, the convenience, the location, the
Oh, yeah,
restaurant.
you wouldn't want to drive a
I've
long
never,
distance to Butler
I have
County.
never, ever decided to not go someplace because of the difference in the sales tax between Butler County and Warren County or Hamilton County. Until recently, I didn't even know what the difference was. Because it's so minimal in terms of the actual dollars you're spending. But I'm not saying that it's not important. That's why we're having this discussion. And after we finish this today, we will have had 3 public meetings on this topic where we want to hear from you.
Yeah, for the record, I just did the math, that, yeah, their sales tax is a little bit less. Their total property tax burden is 38% higher than ours. So that,
Glad my house is in the Butler County.
Who else would like to address the board on this topic?
But you says ours will go up to 7.25%. When would that start?
that's to be determined. That's what we're talking about, when to do it and all those types of things.
How do we
If-
find out? I don't have the internet at home. How do we find out?
So if we pass a resolution today, the resolution says that we would begin collecting on October 1st of this year to coincide, because we wouldn't be getting the first payment until the beginning of next year. We would be passing the property tax holiday at the same time, and that would be for the calendar year of '27. So it would go into effect October 1st
Of this year?
of this
But
year.
we don't collect it. There's a 3-month collection period. So what Commissioner Jones was talking about is when the tax starts, we don't see the benefit of it for 3 months. I believe that's how it works.
It is,
And so if it starts, if we were to pass this resolution today and the tax starts to be paid in October, we don't see the receipts of it until the next year, because there's a 3-month lag for us.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Grossman, if I may, when you say a 1-year term, that would also sunset October 1st of 2027. Tax has to start on the first day of a quarter, so your options are either October 1 to October 1 or January 1 to January 1, just to clarify.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Randy Hollingsworth. I live at 301 East 2nd Street in Franklin, Ohio. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. You just answered one of my questions, and that is, I had assumed that you were hoping to get this in order for the tax to start in January, but apparently you want to push it up, and you've explained your reasoning behind that. I was only aware of this by accident, so I'm not sure how many other people were unaware of what you're considering. So one of my first requests, I guess, is what's the rush in doing this? I know you've had 3 public meetings, you only have to have 2, so you've gone above and beyond the requirement. But I would suggest to you that many residents in Warren County are completely unaware of what's going on.
That's a great question. The rush is the way the budget cycle works by law.
Yeah.
We have to let the Budget Commission know sooner rather than later, are we gonna collect the property tax? So if we're not gonna collect it next year, we've gotta tell them, like, soon.
Yeah, okay.
That's why we're talking about doing it now. And I will say there's, you know, we rarely have more than 3 or 4 people come to our meetings. Our first was probably 80 or 90, and after we kind of talked about what we were doing, and it's in conjunction with this and that, I mean, there was 2 or 3 people that were opposed to it. So once people kind of understand it, again, you have some folks that are just gonna be against it, but most people have kind of changed their tune a little bit once they've understood the totality of what we're talking about.
Yeah, so I missed the first public hearing where more detail of the presentation was done, especially by the auditor. So what I'm about to say, may be inaccurate, so please correct me. It was my understanding that part of his presentation said that if you reduce the property tax, you're gonna lose somewhere, I thought it was around $4 million in rollback from the state. Is that about accurate, or am I even in the ballpark?
We would collect less than $4 to $5 million less in the trade-off, so in total tax collection, that's correct.
Yeah, my understanding was it was not just the effect of the reduction in your rate, but because you were reducing the rate, you would get even less from the state than beyond what the rate was.
Well, it's not from the state.
Yeah,
It's simply, the reduction in the inside millage, the 2.7 mils,
mhm,
then offset by the half-cent increase was about a $4 to $5 million estimated delta. So it's not coming from the state. Indirectly, I guess it's coming from the state, but it's what's collected here in the county.
so that 4 to 5 million was just the difference between the two taxes and not some form of rebate or rollback.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the absolute number I think is, we're talking about not collecting $32 million
Yeah,
in property taxes, while we're projected to bring in around 27 million in sales tax. Those are the real numbers.
Okay, so the other question or concern I had, I spent the afternoon trying to figure out where the 40 to 50% comes from tourism of the sales and use tax. You said it came from the University of Cincinnati.
Yeah, we can provide that study to you.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd like to have that because I did my unexpert analysis of this.
You mean the 60% of our sales tax
Yeah.
being paid for people who live outside of the
Yeah.
county?
Can I present you some paper?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So the first sheet here comes from the
Could you
Ohio.
Can you hand it
All
forward?
Yeah, yes, I will.
Do you want more
I've got
copy?
copies for
Okay,
everybody.
great.
Sure, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
You're fine.
You want a copy?
Sure, please. Oh, I'm not taking yours.
I can get more.
Okay.
We can make copies,
Okay.
don't worry.
So what you're looking at on the first page comes from the state income tax, and it's a file, the file's down there at the bottom right, it's S7CY24, and this happens to be for the tax year 2024, it's the latest that I could find. There may be something later, but it's the latest I could find. And basically what it does is it lists all the different things that are subject to the sales and use tax by industry category, okay? So those numbers are theirs, okay? The next page is those same numbers, but my analysis, okay? A non-expert analysis, okay? Not the University of Cincinnati sophistication, okay? But what I did was I said, based on this industry, what is the likelihood that a tourist is gonna pay that tax, okay?
Is it, by the way, it's just a general question.
Yeah.
Are you trying to determine whether or not the figures that have been provided to us, that 60% of our sales tax is paid by non-residents,
Yes.
accurate? Is
Yes,
that what you're
yes,
trying to do?
yes, that's,
Okay,
yeah.
that's what I thought.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Proceed.
yeah.
But do you know that, you're doing, it looks like a decent job of some guesstimates, but do you understand our real numbers that we have 350,000 people come in from all 50 states and 40 countries for the tennis tournament? Do you know that Kings Island, even though their proprietary numbers, has 4, 5 million that come in?
They're
Do you-
third largest in Six Flags
Yeah,
territory.
multiple millions of people that come in every year. And do you understand that our sports complex, again, no matter what someone says anecdotally, brought in 1.3 million people? These are not small numbers. It's millions of people are coming here for a period of time, filling up at the gas station, eating at our restaurants, staying in our hotels sometimes. They're spending money.
So I'm not here to argue that tourism is not a significant benefit to this county. I'd be foolish to do that. That's not my point. All I'm trying to do is look at these numbers, okay, and match the 50 to 60% to these numbers based on who's likely to spend in these categories. And I can't make that happen. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying as a citizen looking at data that's available to me currently, I don't know how those numbers match up. I'm not saying they're not spending millions of dollars, okay? What I am saying is I'm not sure that 50 to 60% of all the sales and use tax are being provided by people outside of Warren County. these numbers don't add up to that, or I don't see how they add up to that. The University of Cincinnati is certainly smarter than I am, but I would like to see the study.
Well, you sound like a smart guy, but again, there are, again, we're leaving out our biggest retail corridor is Mason Montgomery Road, right on the edge of Hamilton County. So think about the percentage of people that don't live in Warren County that go and shop and spend there every day. And again, we only have 250,000 residents.
Yeah.
And out of those, the percentage that are children or this, so we might have 100,000, 150,000 consumers, but yet we have millions, for sure, of consumers that are coming into the county.
It's estimated the tours from the CVB is 14 million annually.
And you know what, sir, you're absolutely right about this. These are estimates. Because it's difficult, you know what they're not doing?
Yeah.
They're not taking license plates and counting everybody that's outside of Warren County by their license plates and determining. So when Kings Island brings in a whole bunch of people, and they do, and if you actually looked at the license plate that shows state or county tags, you could actually make a really good determination of this. But that's not what they're doing. They're making some estimates based upon some pretty scientific models that they've gotten over decades. And all I can tell you is this. I've been in government in Mason as a city council member and as a former vice mayor and mayor, and I've been on this commission since 2015. And the types of figures that we have received over and over again from experts regarding payment of taxes like sales tax, earnings tax, etc., very typically measures out to non-residents, people outside of the city or the township or the county, is by and large 60% of all the taxes, whether it be sales tax, earnings tax, those types of things are, we're told by the experts, is about 60% versus locally 40%. But to me, the analysis here we're doing today doesn't really matter to me whether it's 50%, 50%, and 50%, or 60% or 40%. I think it's an interesting figure by saying, hey, look, 60% of the sales tax is paid by outside. And I get that that's an argument for this, but from my standpoint, that doesn't matter to me.
It's a significant amount is paid, you know, whether it's 50 or 60. There's a significant amount of tourism. A significant part of our sales tax is paid by people who don't.
And I'm amazed that you spent the kind of time and energy to do this, because it's really fascinating what you've done. And I think it's credible. But at the same time, we've got these experts that it's their job
Are
to
you
do
familiar
this.
with geofencing?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And that's the way most of the retail establishments do it. It's pretty accurate.
So things like our outlet mall, that's considered tourism because it's a lot of people that come from outside of the county to come to that destination. So a lot of these categories even are categories that are represented in the outlet mall, for example. So
what, we don't want to cut you off. So what is your point?
Well, my point is that was brought up in both of the hearings that I've been at. So it seemed to be important to someone on the commission.
I think it's interesting to me.
Yeah,
So to
yeah.
me, we're just broadening the base.
Yeah.
And when I consider things like the majority of the people who reside involuntarily in our jail don't come from the county, yet the county pays for them to be housed and clothed and fed there. I mean, I raise it because I like the fact that a sales tax is broader based and people who don't live here also pay it. But you know, I appreciate where Commissioner Grossman is. Every time we talk about this issue, it doesn't matter to him. He doesn't feel like it's I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but it's not a compelling argument to him. But for me, it's not the why. I just think I like the idea of a broader based, you know, a broader tax base that everybody pays if you consume here.
And remember something, and we had the discussion I had before with Mr. Logan. There is a distinction in the impact of certain types of taxes on certain types of people. And there's taxes, which we talked about, that are regressive or more equal or progressive. Sales tax is a much more equivalent taxation. In other words, it impacts people generally the same way. Not obviously, people that have a lot more money tend to spend more money. But with regard to the sales tax, it's a lot more equivalent. In other words, this is why the Democrats don't like sales tax being a primary basis of funding government services, because they call it regressive. It's not regressive. It still has a progressive component to it, because people that are wealthier pay for more goods and services typically that are subject to the sales tax. But it's not, but it's a flat tax. In other words, the sales tax is the same. You don't go into a restaurant and they say, how much money are you earning? Oh, you're going to pay 10%. They don't do that. They charge the same rate to every single person that comes in. It's a flat rate. That's not the way it is with the federal government with income tax, where it's progressive. It's not true of property taxes, because the property tax depends upon the value of your home. So, and typically, wealthier people have higher value homes. So clearly, when we're taking away the property tax, we're benefiting people who have higher property market value.
The bottom line, we didn't come up with this concept. There's a couple of pretty smart states, like Tennessee and Florida, that are doing pretty well, that they literally don't charge their residents an income tax, because they're leveraging, again, I'm a free market guy. The free market is telling us millions and millions of people, Martin just said 14 million, choose to come to our county for whatever reason, to go to Springboro to shop, to go to the outlet mall, to come to tennis, to come to Kings Island. They're making a free market decision to come and spend their hard-earned money here. Why? We have good stuff here, and we have good roads, we have a safe environment, we have a quality workforce, that people feel safe when they come here. Those are all the things we as a community provide. So I want to leverage those people coming here and spending their money to benefit our residents. That's all we're trying to do.
And my point would be this: taxation can influence behavior. So if you have an income tax rate that is a very significant difference in jurisdiction, whether it be states or countries or whatever, that can definitely influence your behavior, where you live, what effort you put into it. But I also believe the difference in the sales tax between us and Hamilton County, even though they're much higher, I don't think it matters. I don't think that it influences where people go to a restaurant. I don't think, and I'll ask you this question. Do you know that we raised the sales tax to the kind of level we're talking about now previously? Do you know when that was? How long have you lived in the county?
So I grew up here, spent most of my adult life away from here.
Do you know whether we had a higher sales tax rate previously?
Well, based on the conversations
You
just
found out
from
about it.
today.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but you didn't know about it at the time. And now my point is, there was a discussion that we had when we knew we had to build a new jail. There was a discussion with these three commissioners about whether we would raise the sales tax to build that jail. And ultimately it was voted. Now, I voted against it because I didn't want to raise the sales tax. I was hoping we could do something else. They were probably right about this, but I voted against it because I generally do not like raising taxes. However, there was not we publicly announced it. Everybody knew this was happening, and we did not have this discussion. Nobody came in and said, oh my gosh, our sales tax just went up by 0.5 percentage point. And it did. So my point is that we had it for 5 years, and then it sunset and it went away.
Yeah.
And we got rid of it. And we had it during the period of time we were building that jail. And we built the jail, and now we have no debt. And we saved a much greater amount of money by not borrowing the money and having a far higher interest rate on it by issuing bonds, etc. Now, so let me back up. All I'm saying is that this is anecdotal on my part. so maybe it's not scientifically based, but I think the small incremental difference between each of the counties with regard to sales tax does not actually influence economic behavior. In other words, I'm saying that I don't choose to go to a restaurant in Butler County or Warren County or Hamilton County where if you eat in, you will be charged tax. I'm not choosing that based upon the different marginal tax rates. Even though Hamilton County's higher, Butler County is marginally lower, and we're a pretty low rate. So I'm saying economic behavior is not being determined by the difference in this tax. But the property tax is much more significant. I think that's the point that I think is the real question here. Is the property tax more significant generally to the population that pays that property tax than the sales tax? If you don't like our sales tax being raised, you can go over to Butler County and have at it.
Free market.
Exactly. You're free to do that and completely avoid this minor increase. But it happened before and nobody here knew about it. But it did happen. And we raised it and then we lowered it and not a soul knew that it happened because you didn't notice it when you went for each purchase. But now, everybody's been informed of this, and I'm really glad we're here having this conversation. And if we do this today, you can all do something that you're not typically allowed to do. You can all march over to Butler County and start buying everything there. And avoid this completely. And I really like what you're doing here.
I'm still trying to get, what's your point of what are you trying to tell us?
Well-
Is it just questioning the percentage of who pays it?
Well, that became a point from my perspective because it was a point in decisions being made here.
Sure.
And I want the decisions to be made on what I understood to be facts. I'm not saying they're not facts, but I can't find the data that supports
Fair
the
enough.
quote fact, okay?
And then
So,
if you-
so that's why,
Okay.
okay.
If you would look at the studies that we've been given, they're detailed.
Yeah.
And they establish how they came up with those figures.
So I'm trying to figure out a way to say this politely, okay? But I can't figure out a way, and it's not meant to be rude, but.
You think we're wrong with the 60%?
No, that's not what I'm going to say. That's even ruder than that, and I apologize. I learn a lot from listening, and I'm certainly learning a lot from you. But, this is a public forum, and, I've spoken, maybe 5% of the time that we're exchanging here.
Which is why I kept asking you, what's your,
Yeah.
what are you trying to
Yeah.
say? So-
Yeah, well, what I'm really trying to say is I don't believe that you understand the impact this is going to have on certain populations in this county. Basically, what I've heard through the public hearing so far is we have a very well physically managed county, thank you for that. We don't need the money, okay, is what I'm hearing, because we're so physically well managed. But and outside of this meeting, but part of this meeting is that property taxes are a burden. I agree, property taxes are a burden. But the state has already taken steps to reduce that burden by bringing money back to the property tax owners. You indicated that property taxes are generally progressive taxes, that income taxes are generally progressive, except for the state has also flattened those out. So you have a choice of raising taxes on money where you don't need any money, okay? So if I understand your decision, you could equally, if you want to give money back, decide to cut the sales tax versus the property tax. And that would affect certain group of people differently, okay? But what you're choosing to do is, or what you're considering doing, is lowering the property tax. So you have choices and you have the power to do both. And the decision you make will affect different people in different ways. And I think you should take more time to consider and get more information before you make that decision.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I didn't come as prepared as he was. I'm Murali Swami. I live in 4580 Plummer Place, Mason, Ohio. I just have one follow-up clarifying question. If I heard you right, you said the proposed increase in the sales tax will go into effect on October 1st, 2026, potentially. When would the compensating property tax relief will be effective?
For the taxes that are collected in 2027, that would include part of 2026 since they're collected 6 months in arrears.
Perfect. That's all I need.
Okay.
Thank you.
By the way, congratulations on winning the Mason Council.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
Anyone else? I'm getting hungry. I don't know.
I'll do it. I was just waiting for everybody to go. Hi, my name's Lel, 9293 Fields Drive. I just wanted to thank you for doing this. I did not watch this morning yet, sorry, but I have tried to keep up on all the meetings, and I think you're doing a great job trying to explain something that sounds really complicated without all the details and being in the weeds of it. So I do want to thank you for doing that and doing it tonight. And I am with this lady right here who said that when 5,000 people complain online, but only a handful show up, I want to thank the people that actually take the time to show up, including yourselves. So thank you for doing that. As we talk about, and we all know that tourism in the county is so important, and I'm sorry I have not read the UC study. Does it at all, pinpoint maybe a year like 2020 when tourism wouldn't have been as heavy in Warren County and you did have to fight as a board to reintroduce tourism into the county and what that did to our financial dollars? And
Which is a great point, and you would think that that data point would be skewed because of COVID, but in reality, Commissioner Jones and her friends in Columbus actually did something wise, which allowed us to collect the sales taxes locally for online sales. So we actually went up during COVID because
It was after me, but
Yeah.
yes, they did.
It was you. Take it. Just take it.
And they
Feel
were
it was me.
required to do it, but yeah, it's, which is what has made our sales tax collections actually more predictable, which was why we're even in a position to consider trying something like this, because as online sales were increasing, our sales tax collections were more sporadic. So since the legislature equalized those things, now it did exactly what Commissioner Young said. It had the effect of, which was just a strange timing coincidence, it had the effect of kind of smoothing out what that curve was. But it's also had the effect of making our sales tax collections more predictable.
now, is that as predictable as if the economy were to tank tomorrow, if war were to outbreak in a larger sense and people stop spending? Does that kind of attach itself to the same idea that people will spend online, or do
Yeah.
they stop spending altogether and then the 60% we're relying on for tourism
that attaches
goes away?
to the one-year renewals as opposed to making something permanent, because you don't know what the future holds.
Right.
We don't want to make a tax permanent and the tax relief year by year. We want to tie the two together.
Thank you. I think I got that answer in my head now. But thank you again for doing this. I appreciate you listening to the public. I know you're trying to solve problems because you're hearing from everybody that their property taxes are too high. You're trying to solve a problem. You're introducing another concept that could cause a problem. So thank you for just looking at it all and trying to find relief for residents here.
And by the way, before you leave, Ms. Heading, I think it's worthwhile to identify, like Mr. Swami, who's a member of Mason City Council, because you all have been elected. You're a Deerfield Township trustee, and I think it's worthwhile that the public knows who's presenting before us, because you represent a lot of people. You're our largest jurisdiction population-wise. I think Mason may be the second largest jurisdiction. And it's, I think it's noteworthy that we have one trustee from our most prominent and largest population county, or township here, and again, our largest city in Mason is represented here too by a person, and that was Mr. Swami.
I
So
just wanted to thank you for doing it. I'm only speaking for myself, obviously, and not for 45,000 Deerfield Township residents. They'll be able to speak for themselves by how they spend money in the county, but I did want to thank you for doing this. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Leslie Miller, 1586 East Lower Springboro Road. I just had a question alluding to the gentleman that spoke prior. He had said there may be another way to, compensate for the funding. So if there were the property tax break, do you have an alternative plan if you so choose to not pursue the sales tax increase?
Good question. Short answer, no. We get it through fees, property taxes, and sales taxes, by law. That's it.
Sure, but I guess like alluding to what
We
you
don't
said.
have to touch the property tax. We could continue to collect the 2.7. Yeah, so that's,
Correct.
we could do
Well,
that.
the real question for me, when we get to finally to getting to debating this point, is do we really need to have raised the revenue when we decrease revenue? Do we have to have an equivalency there? And that's why this morning, I believe you were here this morning as well, or
No.
weren't you? Okay, I forget because frequently you have come. Because you've been very interested in the fairground and the issues involving the fairground, you and your son who frequently attend. And that's always nice to see you all. But the fact is, we have $93 million in reserve right now.
Kind
Now, well, okay, I get it, it's kind of it, but we have $93 million in our accounts. And the question that I have is, and there are certain reserve accounts that we've got, and we're gonna talk about this again, once we finish with the public commenting to us and we get to vote on this and decide the question, and there's an assumption here that we all agree with this thing, but it isn't our proposal. We're making a general proposal for the public to hear what we're thinking about. But for me, it's a question of how much money do we need? Because it's not, the fact that we have certain revenue that comes in through the sales tax and through the property tax isn't necessarily finely tuned to the amount of money that we actually need to spend every year. And for my purposes, and we did this 4 years ago, and we didn't reduce we reduced our property tax burden, but we didn't increase another tax to offset that loss. And the question I have is, why do we need, I want to reduce the property tax, but do we really need to increase the sales tax? Is that necessary? So that's my question, and I'm not being, in talking to the gentleman who did this wonderful research, the reason why it doesn't necessarily matter to me whether it's 40% or 60% or what it is because what I'm really concerned about is, can we afford to give the property tax reduction without having any tax increase at all?
Are you asking her?
No,
Well,
I'm
I was
telling
going
you.
to then direct
I'm
that
telling you
question
how
back to
I'm
you
viewing
because
it.
that's valid.
Okay, we
You know,
can
it is
debate
valid.
that.
Yeah, exactly, we're gonna debate that, but that's my question.
Okay.
I'm not as concerned about the percentages.
And as far as, Commissioner Young, you had stated that the budget was reduced last year, correct? And so based off of that operating budget, would you find it necessary to have the revenue that's coming in from the sales tax in order to support and sustain that budget?
Fair enough. And again, I can go back to, hate to illustrate 2008, which was a real bad time for the entire economy, 2008 and 9. And we learned a valuable lesson with the surrounding counties, our friends that perhaps were not of the same like mind of us and perhaps spent money. My friends to the south and to the north, when 2008 and 9 hit, became very, very fiscally conservative. And what did they do? They slashed government budgets. Take a guess how many people we laid off in 2008 in Warren County. 0. Why? We don't have any fat. We don't do it. So we are already lean. And again, it's just an interesting debate when literally everything we do, we are the envy. Commissioner Jones is on the State Association of Board Member. Everybody asks, I get interviewed nationally, so how do you guys do it? And it's not one thing we do, everything. We are firing on all cylinders. It's working. Again, we're 38% less total tax burden for property owners than Butler County, who's fiscally conservative, let alone Hamilton or Cuyahoga, that's just a mess. So it's working here. So the question is, well, can't we just go and not collect property taxes again? Commissioner Grossman is right. We named it a property tax holiday 4 years ago. Why did we do that? We had spent years and years building up our surplus to the point where we literally just didn't need to collect it. But now, the position we're in, and we can get into the numbers, but I think that's a different calculation. We're already saying we're willing to take a $4 or $5 million hit. So now we can talk about larger than that, but I agree with you. We're willing to take several $1 million, which is not inconsequential to governments. We're already conceding the fact that we're gonna get $4 or $5 million less by doing this.
So one last question. You said that the budget that was reduced last year, was there a surplus after reducing that budget? There was still a surplus, and can you speak to what that surplus was?
Yeah, I mean, we historically, again, it goes to how do we pay cash for things. So you can't have a big surplus and have no debt. It's kind of one or the other. Because if you build up a surplus and then pay cash for things, that's the polar opposite of saying, oh, we don't have any carryover, but yet we have to borrow money for everything. That is the choice. You can't do them both. We have carried some large surpluses over time. And again, when they've gotten very substantial, like they did 4 years ago, we literally just didn't collect property taxes. And so now we're faced with a $100 million surplus, but if we're really gonna do that, it's really not $100 million. It's, what is it, Martin, like 300 million we've got in accounts now? But the majority of that is going to schools. We hold it in the county treasury.
Correct.
I'm talking, what's significant though is what's in our general.
Yeah, I mean, we had about a $93 million carryover. Our budget, just to use round numbers, is roughly $100 million a year. We had a $93 million carryover. But as Commissioner Young said, a lot of those resources are dedicated for, you know, like we have a facilities plan, so we have been on, you know, every year or two, we've been, you know, we built a new court, we're in the process of building a new criminal suppression unit, we built a jail. So some of that is kind of earmarked for long-term investments in the county so that we don't have to take on debt, so we have savings for it. At the meeting last week, the auditor had testified that he's a part of the Warren County Budget Commission, and their recommendation to political subdivisions as they're reviewing budgets is 6 to 12 months of operating reserves. So for us, that would be between $50 and $100 million to have that 6 to 12 months. So at $93 million, you take, you know.
And I believe you said 60 million this morning, is that correct?
Yeah, 58 million, and then that's not like earmarked for certain projects, so about 58 million. So that's roughly 7 months operating, so that's in that 6 to 12 months operating.
And you had said that the property tax revenue was right around 30?
33, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you then deduct that, that's kind of where your math is.
Yeah,
coming
so we wouldn't collect 33 million in the property
Right.
taxes, and we would collect an additional 27 million in the sales tax, so that, you know, $4, $5, $6 million. I was using round figures because my math on the run, but you get the point. We would be absorbing through, constraining the rate of growth of government as we do every year. We budget on an annual basis, so we have these discussions every single year.
Sure.
And so that would still leave us what the Budget Commission is requiring, that 6 to 12 months
Well, and that was my question, based on, you know, what Commissioner Grossman had said about, is it necessary? And so if we're looking at 60 million in reserves and projecting 6 to 12, less your 32, 33, right? And so those are the numbers that I was looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say no, that essentially, our budget director's here, those numbers accurate, that our unencumbered carryover, which is really what for 20 years we've kind of used as our carryover, because when we put $10 million in a fund to build the jail, it's a carryover, but we don't really consider it a carryover, correct?
Correct.
So you're saying out of 100-ish million or 93 million, our net real discretionary carryover is 50-something?
Right.
56, 58.
So essentially, the choice is, if we were wanting to just not collect the property taxes, that means $33 million is not coming in, which means our carryover
20-something.
would be down in the 20-something, which is substantially less than what our budget commission would even tell us to do.
Those are the hard facts questions. Like you said, you like to deal in facts. I appreciate that. I do want to speak also to the demographics that has been brought up a few times, and many times we've heard, well, I don't pick a restaurant based on where it is. And I can assure you that these families that are feeling the pinch, the families that are not affluent in our county, because there is quite a polarization, those families are not going to restaurants. Those families are picking and choosing where they're shopping. They are making those hard decisions, and I hope that you consider that in your deliberation.
Thank you for that, and,
Yep.
and, I can assure you that we do. We also have heard from seniors, for example, who own their homes, that, the property taxes that they're paying,
Sure.
are making it challenging for them to be able to keep their home, and so we don't, we're trying to balance all the interests, and so, this may not be a perfect solution.
Absolutely.
But I think from my standpoint, I speak for only for myself, it's an opportunity for 1 year to kind of see the impact while we're in a position to collect overall less in tax revenue. We'll absorb that through our normal budgeting office process, to kind of see what the impact is.
And through that, and if this does, you decide to go through with this, looking at what does the impact through community service organizations who are helping these families that are having a harder time, that these aren't homeowners who are having a hard time paying property taxes, because these are homeowners that are seniors that have already lost their homes. These are seniors that are already feeling the pinch. And so looking at that as you're deciding what to do for the next year, what's the impact on our services that are provided through the county, and did we see an increase in that? And so just looking ahead at how can we assess it in the future if you do decide to go through it.
We definitely would be looking at all of those things
Yeah.
as we, ordinarily would. And in a lot of instances, it's our local nonprofit organizations who weigh in with us on a regular basis about what's going on in the community. So I think we're all pretty sensitive to that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Hello.
Hi, Christian Mays, Ruby Drive, Franklin, Ohio. Couple things, thoughts that I've had listening to this meeting tonight, and first and foremost, I just want to thank you. I represent the Republican Party here in Warren County, and a lot of our constituency is changing. It's become more of the grassroots. It's become more of a populist party, and I say that because where I live in Hunter, more specifically, I live in an old neighborhood with a lot of senior citizens that have been in their homes since they were built in the 50s or 60s. And the one thing I continually hear from my personal constituency in my precinct is property tax. So for you guys to be willing to entertain this, I truly appreciate it. It absolutely makes a difference. And for you to be able to explain the way you did how those numbers translate, $50 for say 10,000 in spending versus the 470 we're paying in property tax. I can tell you as a man that lived for years paycheck to paycheck, watching every single dime, every single dollar, having 2 kids, having a wife that stayed at home, and actually paying attention to what we spent and how we spent it. And I lived for years in Butler County as well. And just like you, I live a stone's throw from Butler County now, right on the other side of the interstate right there. So I could go to one or the other. But I'm aware of what those numbers translate to. And truth is, I don't often spend $10,000 in taxable goods. So the $50 really spoke to me, and I appreciate that. One of the things I would just ask, and comes back to the populist and the argument I made there, thank you for doing the nighttime session. A whole lot of people work during the day, and yeah, it's great that we can go back and we can watch them online or whatever, but to have the opportunity to not have to miss work and actually be heard and come out, that's appreciated. And that's the biggest thing I just want to say was thank you.
That's why I love Warren County. Our residents actually have jobs.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing. Republicans work, right? But we work through the day, usually, and we don't get to come to a lot. So like Lel, and Lel, thank you for the reminder, because if I hadn't seen it on social media today, I would have forgotten. She reminded us that the meeting was tonight. I'm disappointed more people didn't come, but please don't stop. What you're doing right now and making yourselves available to the general public, even if they don't take advantage of it, it's a blessing, and I'm appreciative. That's all I want to say.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here tonight.
And by the
Well,
way,
I think more people didn't come because we didn't know about it. I only found out about this by accident. On television, I heard that the taxes were gonna go up in Warren County. I don't know what station was saying that. So then yesterday, I just happened to call here and say, well, what are the sales taxes now? And that's when they told me about this meeting. I know how to use it, but I don't have the internet at home. So I have no way of finding out about meetings like this that affect us. So I am very grateful that you've explained it all, because that helps me to understand what's going on. I think we would have had a bigger turnout, though, if somehow Warren County residents could find out.
Yeah, it's on our, and your name, ma'am?
Betty Thomas.
Thank you for coming. Local news has covered it. Inquirer had a story about it, so I mean, we tried to publicize it as much as we could.
There's no question that the whole kind of public communication process is just, we don't even have really local newspapers anymore in Warren County. I mean, more times than not, we don't even have a reporter who comes to our meetings. There was one here this morning to cover the hearing, but we're, as the media has consolidated, and it is getting harder and harder for us to be able to communicate with people. I mean, we can send press releases, and we post on social media, and we put on our website, and so it's a real challenge. I think we're all trying to figure out how to better communicate with the public, but there's so many choices now for people to get their news and their information. It is a challenge for us. So one of the things I'd like to suggest to people is to make sure, our clerk here, Crystal, so if you want to be on our notification list, she can email you those things. She does a good job of posting our agendas
See,
on.
that leaves me out too. I'm probably one of the only people.
Yeah, I know.
That doesn't have email.
Well, get to know Crystal, so she'll let you know. But it is a real challenge for us. There's not, we used to have the Western Star. We don't have the Western Star anymore. There used to be.
What I found in the news media is the controversy is what sells.
Yes.
And I asked the Inquirer editor, why don't we have a reporter anymore? Well, you have low crime, great schools, low taxes, and people aren't really complaining. You have 3 people show up at your meetings. That's just so unique and different for government at almost any level. It just doesn't sell out. And again, I appreciate our loyal opposition that shows up and tries to fight the good fight, and that's great. And everybody it's a democracy. Everybody has an opinion on it. But that's why we just don't get a lot of coverage, because there's not a lot of controversy, because it's stuff, we're not perfect, but stuff is generally working.
so, and also, we don't know all the exact figures figures here, but the experts tell us, generally speaking, that about 21% of household personal expenditures are subject to a sales tax. Only 21, so of all of your retail spending, only about 21% is subject to a sales tax. And the total average retail spending is about, per capita per household, about like $21,000 a year. So when we use the $10,000 amount to figure this, that's really conservative. That's on the high side of what you might spend in a year that's subject to a sales tax. So by saying that your increase is pretty minimal with what we're talking about here, that's in all probability the case. The other thing that's interesting about this is that if this truly makes a difference, we're so close to a county, Butler County, that has a lower rate than we do, right? It has a lower sales tax rate. You can literally go to Butler County and buy all of your stuff. You're in Franklin, Mr. Mays, and other people, it's very close by. You can adjust it because it's so close by. However, you're about to hear the discussion as to where I'm at with regard to this, and you've not heard that yet. The assumption is that we're all in agreement on this with regard to what's going on here. But I respect this discussion, but I would tell you that it's my personal belief, because we did this before. We raised the sales tax to pay for the jail. And I don't think anybody here that lived here at the time even knew about it. You didn't feel it, and you weren't making an adjustment by going to Butler County, which had a lower sales tax, which it did, because, oh my gosh, we all of a sudden had a higher sales tax. The difference is so minor, relatively speaking, that it doesn't actually affect economic activity. But there are differences that do affect economic activity. But I personally believe that this difference doesn't. I believe that the property tax is probably much more important to people than the marginal sales tax, which actually impacts you in terms of taxes paid at a far lower amount, because your retail spending that is affected by the sales tax is actually so low.
Is there anybody else here who wishes to address the board on this matter?
Yeah, may I follow up from the
Sure.
Yeah, but I need you to come just so,
Okay.
so our microphone can pick you up, because you're famous, people are watching, tens of people are watching you.
All right.
There might even be double-digit people
Yeah.
watching.
Now I'm nervous.
Tens.
Now I'm very nervous.
And your name again, sir?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's Randy Hollingsworth. I live at 301 East 2nd Street, Franklin, Ohio. I think the point about, the amount that you're going to raise and the amount you're going to lose is $5 million, okay? So they're about equal, in difference. So it's either an important amount or it's not an important amount, right? Because they're about the same. The other thing I would say is a primary difference between the property tax and the sales tax is you pay the property tax in a single amount, single or double amount. So it's much more noticeable to the public, okay? But you pay sales tax in very small increments that adds up over time. So if the numbers are about equal, you're somebody, okay, different people, but somebody's paying about the same amount of money. It's just that one is more noticeable than the other because of how it's paid. Thanks.
Okay. But and here's the flaw in that argument.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be, I'm not denigrating you.
Yeah.
Far larger numbers of people pay the sales tax than the property tax. In other words, it isn't the same pool. The number of people that pay the sales tax is a multiplier of the people who pay the property tax. Because the number of property tax payers is a fraction, a small fraction of the number of people that pay the sales tax. So it's not an equivalency. You're right. It's about the same amount of number, but the people who pay the sales tax is like this, and the people who pay the property tax is way down here. So it has a very different impact.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying to you is the people that pay the sales tax don't notice the difference, the marginally small percentage difference between Butler County, that's got a lower rate than us, even now, and even what we were before, when in 2017, I think it was in 2017 or 18, something like that, Ms. Jones was on the commission at the time, we raised the sales tax to pay for the jail, to help pay for the jail. And nobody was, I'm submitting to you that people didn't notice the difference because it was just a small difference. And it isn't accurate to say it's the same number of people, because the number of people that pay the sales tax is a huge number as compared to a much smaller number that pay the property tax.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, one I didn't consider, so thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Okay, well, I think everybody who wanted to speak has had a chance to speak. Adam, I'm gonna ask you, just for the purposes of the record, to explain the deadlines around our needing to act, if we wish to go down this path, what this triggers.
Sure, thank you, Commissioner Jones. So the timeline you're working on now, sort of discussed, would be to make the tax, sales and use tax increase effective October 1, 2026. That is if you were to act tonight. There's a 30-day referendum period, which takes you about to the last week of July. If there's not a referendum, then you're giving the Tax Commissioner of Ohio notice of the increase. That increase has to be given in 65 days prior. And then the tax commissioner has to give the vendor 60 days notice of the increase. So that has to happen before the effective date. Effective date has to be on the first day of a quarter. So that takes you to October 1. Vendors start paying the taxes by November 23rd. And tax commissioner has a duty to process the payments, so 30 days. And then so you would be receiving first monthly payments by January 2027. Compare that timeline to your timeline with your annual tax budget. You've already done some of the work, asking for the different department heads and elected officials to submit potential estimates on expenditures and revenues and things like that. That happens in May. And then by August, you need to tell the Budget Commission whether or not you're going to, what you're going to collect from inside millage, and also a projection of expenditures and revenues, because they have a timeline that they have to act by. And I don't have that date memorized, but you know, this board considered whether or not there should be changes to inside millage in years past, and there was a great debate of, you know, and learning from that, you have to know by the end of July what you're going to do, because the Budget Commission has to make its decision. I believe they have a certain amount of time. I don't want to give a date because it's going to be wrong, so I can't remember right now.
Well, but Adam, if we act by July, before the end of July, we've acted in time.
No,
Is that right?
not to allow for the referendum period. We would have to act.
By the end of June.
Yeah,
Because there's a 30-day referendum period.
that's right. And then there's a 65-day notice, for which then they have a 60-day notice requirement to the vendors
Okay.
to get us to October 1st, and it has to be the beginning of the quarter.
That's right. So if you delay the decision on this, then you're automatically in that realm of, well, then the soonest it could be effective would be January 1, because it has to be on the first day of the quarter. You don't have time to delay it and make it effective October 1.
Okay, what is the most propitious time that we should act on this?
Tonight.
Tonight? Okay.
And you know, the problem is when taxes.
All right, well, and let's explain the referendum bit. So every decision we make is subject to a petition drive to force a vote on this by referendum. And you have to go out to the public with a petition and get a set number based upon the last gubernatorial election, is that right?
That's correct.
and you've got 30 days to do it in, and you've got a percentage that you have to get, and that will, if you get that percentage and you submit it within the 30 days, that stays our decision until there's a vote on it.
So we just have to allow for that time frame. So if the voters wish to go forward with a referendum, we have to allow for that 30-day time, sort of a cure period, the 65-day notification to the department, the 60-day notification to the vendors, in order to start collecting.
I mean, I would have preferred to allow one more week before we make a decision, to allow people viewing this to communicate with us. That would be my preference, but if that's, Adam, if that's not wise in light of the timing, then we can make this decision tonight. But is there a problem with us waiting? Because we get a lot of email from people. We get text messages, email, and people actually watch these meetings, and it's very valuable to hear the sense of that. But but you think that we should do it tonight? We can't wait a week.
If you want it to be effective by October 1st. So I did a work back timeline, I have a copy of it with me, but the process really began when you did your publication for 2 notices of 2 public meetings on May 12th. That's kind of when you start on the timeline you're on now. So really any,
Well, the real question to me is not when the sales tax goes into effect, but that we will get the property tax relief in the tax bill that is paid by January. That's what, isn't that, we want this to be
We
effective.
just notified the tax commission, right? Or the budget committee.
We have to.
Yeah, we just notify them with.
Our tax budget.
as part of your annual tax budget, you indicate that you want to collect 0 of the inside
And
millage.
that will happen in August, is typically when our tax budget hearing is.
So here's my question. Since you pay your real estate taxes 6 months in arrears.
It's 1 year in arrears.
Is it 1 year in arrears?
Yes, so taxes are being charged right now for 2026. All of those are collected in 2027.
That's right.
When you make your tax budget decision in August, what you're telling the Budget Commission is do not collect in 2027 the taxes that would have been owed in 2026.
Well, that's exactly, but I get the point. But the way in which we pay the taxes are that, for example, this July, I'm supposing that we're gonna be paying Warren County property tax. But that's for the taxes that were owed for the last 6 months of 2025.
The entire tax lien becomes due January 1, and you just make payments in 2
Okay.
payments.
All right, so here's the question. If we were to make a decision 1 week from now, would this then affect the entire tax burden of real estate taxes paid by our residents in 2027?
You have a
I'm fine
two-part
calling the
decision
question
to make.
Okay.
What's that, Adam?
Well, you have a two-part decision to make. So your question is, if we made this decision now, would it affect real property tax? I think the question is the decision only pertaining to real property tax, or is the decision pertaining
Well,
to?
it's gonna be both, but the concern that I've got for the tax reduction, I'm not so concerned about the tax increase and when it takes effect. I am concerned that in 2027, that our tax reduction applies to the payments made that entire year. And that's why I'm saying, is there a week, waiting a week creates a problem with that?
Not on the real property tax
That's the
decision
only question
alone.
that I had.
So the resolution that Adam prepared for us, because we wanted to be able to take action on both things simultaneously, so we weren't taking a vote to increase taxes, since we technically would have until August to inform the, to pass a tax budget for the Budget Commission, to say we don't wish to collect the 2.7 mils for 2027. But our desire from, March, when we first started having these conversations, were to do them simultaneously. So it is the sales tax increase that is pushing the question. So, you know, what I'm not interested in doing is passing a sales tax increase tonight without the corresponding property tax reduction that we technically don't have to make until August, when we have our tax budget hearing. I think that we ought to take those actions together.
So there's no prohibition on us not, or passing a resolution not to collect the tax. Even though it's not due until August, we can say tonight, we're not passing the tax.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's what the
That's-
resolution said.
It's two parts,
And I
right?
would tell you from Lisa's perspective, from the tax budget, from a revenue perspective, assuming that's what we were hearing from the board, from a property tax perspective, we've already reduced revenues roughly $30-some million, anticipating that that's what you're going to do.
So it's like in order to effectuate the tax increase, we need to act today to be able to collect beginning October 1. We don't have to act on the property tax reduction until August, but in consultation with Adam and the resolution that he provided for us for review, does both of those things. So while we'll still pass a tax budget, we are setting forward in a resolution that we do not intend to collect the inside millage.
Yeah, and the millage not being collected, that is for the entire 2027 calendar year, correct?
That's correct. It's for all the taxes that are being charged right now for 2026, 100% of which become a lien on all property in January 2027 and are paid in those two payments in 2027.
And so even though theoretically, or not theoretically, even though this proposal has a sales tax increase that's effective October 1, that actually terminates the following October 1, correct?
That's correct.
That's right.
So it doesn't go for the whole calendar year. So
Right,
it's a
not
12-month
It's
deal.
not a 14-month.
Yeah, it's a
tax,
12-month
it's a
deal.
12-month,
Okay.
yeah,
That's right.
increase.
And we did, you know, I did have several meetings, and even the auditor said this when he was here. We did try to see if we could make the turn for this payment, and the auditor said it was just not possible for the back end work to do, to be able to do the property tax reduction for this coming collection. So he said the next time we would be able to do it would be for the next calendar year for taxes owed.
So, and I am prepared, as I was in this past spring, to vote to reduce the property tax and ensure we've got that. And I know that there's this, Commissioner Jones, you'd like to vote on them at the same time, but I'm not clear right now on whether I want to increase the sales tax. I'd like to have more time to consider that, but I'm ready right now to vote to decrease the property.
But how can we do that if we're being told our real carryover's $56 million, and we're talking about eliminating $32 million worth of revenue, which
Well,
would
that's
put us-
exactly why I'm willing, because we've got 56 million and we're reducing it less than that, and that's a reserve amount. That is a carryover balance. So I believe.
So you're willing to let our carryover go to 22 million?
Yeah, I'm willing to, well, yes, I'm willing to do that, and I want to talk more about the sales tax.
But the Budget Commission, I mean, has said that they are at a 6 to 12 month carryover is what they want us to have, which would be roughly $55 million.
So essentially, we can't cut the
But-
property
Okay,
taxes.
okay, so now we're actually, are we closing the hearing and now we're having a discussion?
It's not,
about it?
it was just a work session, so
Okay,
there's
okay,
not a,
that's-
we don't need
so
to take
here's the
action.
question that I've got. Since we have $93 million, and then everybody's talking about 56, but actually we've got 93 million or $94 million. And the reason why you're cutting it down to 56 or 58 is because we've got these arbitrary funds that we've put in.
The way we've done it for the last 20 years.
I understand, but it's still.
But it's
It's not
actually not
arbitrary.
arbitrary. We did, for example, a
So
facility.
you're suggesting we change the way we've done
No,
accounting
I'm
accounting
not.
for the
Well,
last
we
20
I'm
did
years?
not
do a
doing that.
facility study. So we did a facility study. It was a 7-year I think it was a 7-year study for all of the infrastructure that would need to be replaced or upgraded over that period of time. So we're, working through those projects. So I mean, we certainly could choose not to continue to do that, but it isn't arbitrary. It
No, I'm
is,
not
it
saying-
is based on a study that we did, a deliberation that we did, an approval of that timeline. But yeah, I mean, we could change our minds on that.
What's it, because, and those are the types of things that I'd like to go back and have time to review. Because we've already spent, the major spending that we make is on, when we have some big facility we have to pay for. And where we don't want to have debt to do it. And so we got a new jail. We got a new county courthouse. We have a relatively new administration building, which houses our offices and houses the treasurer.
Well, instead of guessing, Lisa or Martin, would you like to tell us what the $40-something million is actually doing? Isn't
Yeah, I
$10
mean,
million into the fund that was just approved for?
It's the Economic Development Fund, it's the Stabilization Fund, we have 13.5, and we bumped that up we were at 12 million, and we bumped that up because you can do it based off expenditures. The other is tech services, roughly has about, and Lisa, correct me if I'm misquoting on this here, is about $500,000 that they're looking at for capital purchases. We always have.
Well, wait a second. When you're saying looking at it for capital purchases are typically spending on facilities, correct?
Well, when it comes to tech
No.
services on them, you have things like
Software,
big radio systems.
Radio
and-
systems.
And the operating goes to the
Well, we
contracts
just
of those.
we just upgraded all of our, you're talking about our system for taking in calls for emergency services.
The police
Some of it's
radio.
cybersecurity, that we're taking on a lot more costs with respect to people trying to hack into our systems.
Yeah,
and-
actually,
and-
that's one thing that's in the discussion is encryption relative to 911 calls based off of some AI things that are, and Gary's actually
But
working
how
on
do
it.
we estimate those expenditures in the future?
Well,
That's what I don't
Lisa and
understand.
Susan have been meeting with staff, and
Because
they're,
that hasn't been presented to us, though. So when you are giving these estimates, this is why one more time, is because when you're estimating these numbers, we've not had a meeting where we substantiate these estimates of future spending. And that's what's driving this. I'm just saying that I have not seen.
Yeah, I mean, it may be driving it for you, but, they're doing the preparation work and have reached out to our staff and have given them instruction for preparing our tax budget that ultimately leads to our operating budget. So that's what they're in the process of doing right now. And at previous meetings, we said we need to better understand this, and in fact, it's why Lisa has been working on a separate capital budget for our budgeting moving forward, so there'd be more transparency around our capital projects. So, we have the study that we did, we're kind of implementing that study, the cybersecurity and the tech infrastructure. Every year, there are additional requests from staff on there because of the nature of that work. And so we are trying to get more transparency into those things, but.
I was gonna say, just along that lines, I mean, with for instance, Lisa has in here roughly $3 million for facilities. Yes, we have newer buildings, but there's going to be a roof that needs to be replaced.
Yeah, we have 1 million square feet under roof, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
HVAC systems, it's just normal maintenance.
Right, so that goes into a capital fund. On the facility, and I apologize for cutting you off there, but from a facility studies perspective, Trevor and them are finishing it up, but there's really 2 items or it could be 3, but there's really 2 items that have been discussed, and we have to kind of get the final blessing from you at some point when Trevor and Michelle are ready. But that is the largest thing that's coming forward is what sits behind, or in front of us, I guess, down in our direction, and that is the Health and Human Services building. there's nothing that you can do to make it ADA compliable or compatible. You spend more money trying to rehab
Probably
it
the
than.
oldest building
It is
we
the oldest
have.
building that we have. But it's all, that's why we asked relative back then from a facility study from a moving parts, because when you ended up doing the county court, you know, that ended up taking the SWAT garage and the gun range. Now we're in the process of building the suppression that they changed the name to, and that's a, you know, roughly an $8 million building that we're paying cash for. That then, the thought process is, and it may change, but the thought process is, well, now that the jail and everything has been the old jail and sheriff's office has been torn down, I think what they want to present to you is that facilities might be tucked back, which then would allow this building over time to move our facilities so we can take advantage of this large parking lot. But we have estimates that Lisa's starting to budget for, but that building, if we replace it, and it may change based off of, you know, the fact that some things are more computer, they don't need as many people to come. But I think that's at least a $20 million building that they've talked about. And so she's setting money aside and doing that. So yes, you could have additional dollars, but that means the facilities don't get improved. Or they get delayed.
But is this somehow unique to this year, or is this the way we've always done it?
It's the way we've done it to build up for all of it. The real one, I think, after the jail was all the things that it triggered.
All right, well, let me go back and ask a question. When we did not, 4 years ago, charge for our inside millage, and when we asked developmental disabilities and the senior services, which is completely unrelated, but we asked them not to charge for a year, which they didn't, and that was based upon their reserves. What reserve did we have back then?
Yeah, I mean, we could, I don't know the answer to the question, neither does he, but we could choose to do the same thing we did 4 years ago and then continue to collect for 4 more years. I think what we're trying to see here is, can we do the property tax year over year over year, as opposed to building up reserves and then giving a property tax?
Which is what, I think I do know the answer to that. There's no way we would have gone below the 6 month and been okay
No,
with
and I
that.
think that's-
The 4 years ago, we had a lot higher percentage reserve.
That's why I'm
There's no
asking.
way we went below that, because we just don't do that.
Well, we had a lot of one-time money from the feds with respect to
Well, you see,
COVID.
there is the secret, is that the
Well, I don't know if
COVID
it's a
thing.
secret.
Well, I know, it isn't a secret, but there was 46 million additional dollars. that
Yeah,
came in.
I mean, and we, at that point, we had the conversation that, we wanted to ensure that everybody was benefiting from their own tax dollars.
Right, and that's right, because
I
I hate to
think
say
it's
it,
a
that was our backdoor way of, we couldn't give it directly to taxpayers, and I'm not saying this is what I did, but maybe someone talked about, well, maybe this is a backdoor way to give it to taxpayers.
Yeah,
by just not collecting property
I'm
tax.
saying, my recollection is that the argument could be made that we gave that tax break because of the additional funds that we received because of the COVID relief from the federal government of about $46 million. Now, having said all that, it's my belief that the property tax reduction is far more impactful and helpful to our citizens than the marginal small increase in sales tax. Because I believe that sales tax is a far more egalitarian tax paid for by a far greater number of people and has far less impact individually because they actually can control the tax they pay. But the people who have property in this county can't just move, can't just decide, I'm gonna sell my house and get the heck out of here and go someplace else, which, by the way, is gonna be a higher tax jurisdiction. If you look at it in almost any calculation, reducing property taxes is far more beneficial to our population and to our county than the very small marginal tax increase, which is voluntary, can be controlled by the people spending and deciding where they want to go. And literally, they can say, hey, if you want to spend less than sales tax, go to Butler County. And you can get all the benefit of having a slightly lower sales tax. But I don't believe anybody ever actually makes this decision. any more than they made it when we had a higher sales tax because of the jail. So, you know, why I wanted to look at the numbers before I voted on some of this. My feeling is that the benefit to lowering the property tax is much more impactful to the people that are paying high property taxes than the small increase that they will pay in sales tax, because of the fact that only 21% of your retail discretionary spending is actually subject to a sales tax. And it's a much smaller amount. The figure of 10,000 is very generous.
And I was just guessing because I'm not that smart, so I was trying to keep the math easy.
Yeah, but the 10,000 is a very generous amount. It's clear to me that the increase of any individual if we increase the sales tax is minimal compared to the great benefit. And of course, you know, so, I mean, I really appreciate the gentleman's analysis, but for me, it doesn't matter whether it's 60% or 50% or what the heck it is in terms of the population. It doesn't. I think that property tax relief is far more important to our taxpayers than the marginal increase in sales tax.
The simplest way I think of it is we're leveraging something that we have that's unique, which is tourism. We're leveraging that to benefit our property owners. And there's just no way around that. We're literally, we are taking a revenue hit. Oh, it's only $4 or $5 million. That's like 5% of our budget. I mean, that's not an inconsequential amount that we're literally gonna figure out a way not to come up with that money. So we're automatically gonna eat into the carryover by that. And so this way, again, I'm just not comfortable saying, hey, according to the people that have done it forever, we've got a $58 million carryover. It's not 100 because of all the other things that were discussed the same way we've done it forever. We have a $50-something million carryover. Let's not collect $30-something million. I'm not comfortable doing that.
And I think for 1 year, it'll give us an opportunity to see. So it's not forever, it's not in perpetuity, it's setting up a conversation that I think is a good conversation to have. And in the meantime, we're gonna have to tighten our belt again, we're gonna have to reduce our budget, and all of those things I think are good. You know, at the end of the day, the biggest expense that, you know, the thing that we fund with our budget, by and large, is the sheriff's department and criminal justice services. You know, 911 dispatch, emergency services, road patrols, operating the jail. I mean, that is the lion's share of our budget. And, you know, we want to be able to make sure that we can provide the high quality services at the lowest possible price and be able to sustain that, you know, in perpetuity. So people don't need to be concerned about it. If we do nothing else, the reason why we had the Tea Party here when we were debating raising the sales tax to fund the jail in favor of us raising the sales tax to fund the jail is because they value our security, and they believe that's a legitimate role of government and wanted us to fund it in as broad and as low of a tax as possible. And so, you know, it wasn't that nobody showed up. We had a lot of people who showed up, but those who are most tax questioning, you know, were like, yes, this is a good way to do this. It's a fair way to do this. Road patrols and running the jail and those sorts of things aren't free, and we expect you to be able to do that. So,
well, I mean, I think the point you're making is this, and this is why, generally, and we don't have to bring in Democrats and Republicans, but the sales tax is a far more egalitarian tax. It is not a progressive tax, but the property tax is not egalitarian. It only is directly subjected to property owners are far fewer, and it is far more progressive, and it's based upon an evaluation of their property that they can't really control, somebody else is controlling it. While the spending in sales tax, which is far less, is spread over a far greater number of people and is egalitarian. And in terms of tax theory, the people that favor sales tax being the primary revenue source are conservative Republicans who are much more libertarian minded and don't like the fact that certain segments of our political population want to subject certain very productive people or people that have more property and make them pay a far higher tax burden for the same services that somebody else is also getting. And so, generally speaking, if we can help reduce the property tax and then shift some burden over to a far larger group of people with sales tax, which is a way more egalitarian tax, that is fairer to the general welfare of our population.
So we have a resolution that I would ask the clerk to read by title, and then if there's a desire to make a motion on it, I would entertain it.
Just throwing it out there.
I mean, I just,
See, my preference would be to give another week, but if Adam says we can't do that, then we need to vote on it. Is that right, Adam?
Yes, I mean, we worked 2 timelines, and you're on the most aggressive timeline to ensure that the sales tax money be trickling in by January of 2027. The other timeline makes it effective January 1, and then the sales tax revenue starts trickling in April.
You see, the
2027.
difference is only this. The difference is, if we act 1 week from today, the property tax relief begins at the same time as we would do it tonight. But you're saying that the sales tax increase
Misses a quarter.
It misses a quarter. That's the only.
But it's
point
still
you're making.
12 month, but
Yes.
yet the timing, it's millions
But
to
does
us
that-
on timing of when money comes in.
Yeah,
That's,
but does that, but that, does
it's
that,
not the end of the world.
but does that make a difference to us?
it does to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, Lisa, what do you, when I
I would
address
rather
it?
October 1st, so that come that first quarter, we have the funds to start paying those. Because that's usually when the majority of our expenses are, in that first quarter.
But what risk do we have in not having that revenue for 1
We
quarter?
carry over money, it's part of our carryover, is carryover to close out the previous year, the expenses that don't come until the beginning of, in first quarter of the following year. So our expenditures are really high in January and February because we're still closing out the year. And so, you know, I just don't, for a week, I don't, the risk that we're taking on, I just don't, I don't know that the juice
And
is
we've already
worth
had
the
more
squeeze.
meetings than we were statutorily required.
I mean, we set public hearings for this, but we've certainly been talking about this in public, you know, meetings, you know, for months now, really since the beginning of the year. So, I mean, I don't feel like people don't have a chance to weigh in. We've heard people on both sides of the equation. We've heard from the auditor. We've heard from our staff. We've done a lot of number crunching to
And it's
minimize
actually,
the risk.
it's a good point. We've heard from people, don't do it, only do property taxes. And then we also heard, do property taxes forever.
Yeah.
And so we've heard kind of both ends of the
And we
spectrum.
heard people last week
Yeah.
say, do the sales tax forever.
Yeah.
They said, we preferred
Yeah.
to the sales tax to a
To
property
go back
tax.
to with just a philosophical approach
Yeah.
of how taxations. And just for the record, I think it's important to let people know, again, this is all kind of started with the state and property tax reform. And to give credit to, were we leaders or did we say anything about this? This board and our auditor, when talking about literally eliminating property taxes in the state, when that was proposed, the comment was made, if we, on our side of the aisle, do that, that would be the biggest defunding of the police ever. We said that. So, which is true, because we would have lost, the ability to have a sheriff's department. We would have had to slash that. So we have been outspoken on trying to get this fixed, at the same time of trying to recognize there's certain members of our population, fixed income seniors, who it doesn't matter how much their valuation goes up, that are getting hosed in all this thing. And even though we're only 5% of the equation, can we do something? And so this is the best way I know of doing something that I'm comfortable with without jeopardizing the carryover balance of the county moving forward.
By the way, it's something that should be, so the legislature was considering ending property taxes.
No, there's a.
No, but they didn't do it. I
The
thought they-
petition, there was a state referendum.
There's a petition.
Well, that's going on right now.
Yes.
But previously, what was the suggestion being made last year? Or was it 2 years ago? When was the suggestion being made that we were going to lose our property taxes?
Well, that was based on the citizen petition, which is still ongoing. They just aren't gonna make it for the ballot for this coming November, but they are.
Well, I thought the legislature was doing so.
So the legislature the legislature is concerned about it. Now, there may be some members of the General Assembly who've offered all kinds of bills, is typically the case. I don't monitor it at that level, but the General Assembly has been looking for ways to address the property tax concerns that are legitimate, to avoid for the complete removal of property taxes.
Well, remind me of this, so if we got rid of property taxes entirely, I thought if that occurred, we would have to raise our sales tax to 17% to make
The state
it.
sales
That's where I
tax.
was going with it. That is accurate. So in lieu of losing a third of your budget, just replace it with sales tax, there has been studies done on that, it would go to 17%.
Statewide, yeah.
And that means I am driving to Kentucky or to Indiana to go buy my stuff. You know, buying a washer dryer, that's where I'm going, period. So,
Well,
But I
and
think
the other challenge that we have to be mindful of is that the state does not derive its revenues from property taxes. So there has been discussions with some members who aren't, persuaded by, other members of the General Assembly, so you can't just eliminate a huge portion of local government's revenues without some sort of alternative. But the pressure isn't there on their side because they're not actually losing any revenue to it. And if past is any indication of future behavior, we've watched them over time, reduce local government funding, through the local government fund and other revenue sharing. And so that's really where the concern was stemming from. It's like, look, folks, we have to decide what services we want to provide and how we're gonna pay for it. And so this is really just part of that conversation is we try not to take on responsibilities that we are not required to do expressly by the Ohio Revised Code. Now, do we do some things that we aren't required by the Ohio Revised Code to fund? Yes, we do sheriff's road patrols in communities. That is not something that's required under the Ohio Revised Code, but it is something that the public wants. They like to know that their neighborhoods and communities are safe, and so we have always done that. That will require a different conversation if they eliminate a third of our revenue. And that's, voters have the right to determine that, and we'll have to adjust to that. But this is a way for us to see, can we broaden the base and lower the rate over time so we're not as dependent on property taxes and can continue to provide the high quality services that people had come to expect. And that's doing it in a 1 year period of time, doing it when we think the overall collection of all taxes will even be reduced by $4 or $5 million, seems like a good time to try it. the last thing I would say is I don't want to lose, as we've always been about every budget year, about where can we tighten the belt, how can we do more with less, how can we partner and provide better quality services at a lower price. It's like we have to, you know, increase our conversations with communities, our partners, about how we can consolidate services. I mean, we have 3 911 centers in this county, and the technology is such that, you know, we don't need 3. We can consolidate to 1 and provide a higher level of service with better technology, saving resources. The same is true with our fire and EMS services. You know, every community is dependent on their individual taxing jurisdiction to provide property taxes to fund it. Is there a way we can continue to provide the high quality services to our residents while consolidating and taking advantage of efficiencies? Those are the kinds of conversations that we need to continue to be encouraging our partners to have. I'm not, you know, I'm not trying to be the queen of Warren County and say it's got to be our way and everybody should. No, it's not. But you know, how do we look at our courts? How do we look at our 911? How do we look at our emergency services? Can we consolidate and get some advantages, both in terms of service delivery and in terms of cost to taxpayers? You know, these are the types of things that a $5 million hit to our budget is going to, you know, continue to force those conversations. And I think we got to take this opportunity to resurface, you know, these types of things. I mean, cities have home rule, and I get that. They want to have 911, they can have 911. If they want to, you know, have their own police department or their fire department, you know, they certainly can do that. But I gotta believe, with technology being the way it is, that we could do better on behalf of our residents if we're willing to have those harder conversations.
Well said, and you asked the clerk, and I'll just give you credit to Commissioner Jones. This was Commissioner Jones's idea in working with the auditor, that Warren County is in a unique position to try, because there's a lot of other communities that don't have the same advantages that we do relative to all the tourists that come in and would offset this. And it just happens to be a small increase to get us equal with what everybody else is, happens to be in the ballpark of what the property tax elimination would be. So I see this, again, we're leveraging a blessing that we have to give a direct benefit to our property owners. And I'll say call a question.
So I have a resolution preparing the annual tax budget with a reduction of the county's inside millage to 0 mills pursuant to ORC 5705.313, approving the levying of an additional 0.5% of permissive sales tax for a total of 1% of a permissive sales tax pursuant to ORC 5739.021, and approving the levying of an additional 0.5% of the corresponding use tax for a total of 1% of a use tax pursuant to ORC 5741.021.
I'll make that motion.
All right, and I'll second it, and go ahead and call a roll.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr.
I'm
Grossman?
going to pass until Mr. Young votes.
Mr. Young?
Yes?
All right, so I could vote no, and it wouldn't change a thing. But the reason I did that is because this is not a political question. Everything is a political question, I suppose. But in reality, I believe that this is best for our jurisdiction. I could vote no so that my opponents, who are both here tonight and both spoke, in the election that's going to come up in November. But I'm going to vote because I believe that this is in the best interest of our community, and so I will vote yes too.
Good for you. I like that.
I know. And I'm sure I will be hearing about this in November, that I'm raising taxes.
All good.
I'm not sure, but regardless, that concludes our business for the evening.
Make a motion to adjourn?
And yes.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate it. Good discussion.